The following messages are from the House of Representatives, March 3, 2021. Message number 152. Mr. President, the following bills passed the House on third reading by the votes indicated. House Bill number 43, Digital Assets Amendments, ayes 48, noes 12. Message number 150. House Bill number 21, Wyoming National Guard Preference for Education, ayes 59, noes 1. Signed, Wendy Harding, House Chief Clerk. Message number 160, March 3, 2021. Mr. President, the following bill failed to pass the House on third reading. House Bill number 23, Highway Safety Child Restraints, ayes 26, noes 34. Signed, Wendy Harding, House Chief Clerk. Message number 151. Mr. President, the following bills passed the House on third reading in an amended form by the votes indicated. House Bill number 41, Interstate Crowdfunding Exemption Amendments, ayes 54, noes 6. Message number 153, House Bill number 69, Division of Banking Fees, ayes 60. Message number 154, House Bill number 86, Off-Road Recreational Vehicles Registration Authorized, ayes 60. Message number 155, House Bill number 107, Retirement System Efficient Disbursement Method, ayes 60. Message number 156, House Bill number 7, Air Ambulance Membership Organizations Regulation, ayes 55, noes 5. Message number 157, House Bill number 19, Antique Motor Vehicles, ayes 38, noes 22. Message number 158, House Bill number 20, Driver's License Requirements, Visual Acuity, ayes 60. Message number 159, House Bill number 22, Wyoming Military Code, ayes 39, noes 21. Message number 161, House Bill number 52, Wyoming School Protein Enhancement Project, ayes 60. Message number 162, House Bill number 57, Advance Enrollment, ayes 60. Message number 163, House Bill number 64, Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, Extinguishing Claims, ayes 39, noes 21. Message number 164, House Bill number 68, Wyoming Statutory Foundation Act Amendments, ayes 60. Message number 165, House Bill number 75, Voter Fraud Prevention, ayes 51, noes 9. Message number 166, House Bill number 91, Removal of Unenforceable Property Covenants, ayes 57, noes 2, excused 1. Signed, Wendy Harding, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you. Senator Bidman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Privilege of the floor, please.
Please do.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate. I think it's first one of the in-person session that we
Yes,
have
it
some
is.
folks up here in the balcony. Turn your attention, please, to the south balcony up there. We have volunteers for Convention of States, a grassroots organization. And these people came from all corners of Wyoming to be here today to testify in front of the Minerals Committee on the Article 5 bill that we debated today. They gave a great job of laying out their case, and it was a good spirited debate. And I would like to welcome them to the Senate. Ladies and gentlemen, Convention of States, Wyoming.
Thank you for coming, Convention of the States. You traveled a long way, I understand, and appreciate you coming to be involved in the process. Welcome to the Senate today. And you must have brought good weather. I stepped outside for a minute, felt like it was over 50, and that must be because of you good folks. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Senator Bidman. Reports from standing committees.
March 1, 2021, Mr. President, your committee number 4, Education, to whom is referred Senate File 2, House Facilities Project Prioritization, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Bidman, Ellis, Rothfuss, Salazar, and Scott. Senator Scott, Chairman. March 1, 2021, Mr. President, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred Senate File 25, Animal Impound Proceedings, Bond and Disposition, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Cooper, French, Kolb, Cost, and Nethercott. Senator Nethercott, Chairman. March 3, 2021, Mr. President, your committee number 4, Education, to whom was referred Senate File 108, Career and Technical Education Terminology, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Senators Beitman, Ellis, Rothfuss, Salazar, and Scott. Senator Scott, Chairman. March 3, 2021, Mr. President, your committee number 4, Education, to whom is referred Senate File 115, Education Pupil Teacher Contact Time, respectfully reports back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Senators Beitman, Ellis, Rothfuss, Salazar, and Scott. Senator Scott, Chairman. March 3, 2021, Mr. President, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 114, State Land Leases, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Boner, Bouchard, French, Cost, and Wasserberger. Senator Boner, Chairman. March 3, 2021, Mr. President, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom was referred Senate File 109, Board of Dental Examiners Amendments, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Senators Baldwin, Bouchard, Furphy, Hutchings, and McCohen. Senator Baldwin, Chairman. March 3, 2021, Mr. President, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom was referred Senate File 80, Public Health Orders, Local and Legislative Oversight, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Senators Bouchard, Hutchings, and McEwen. No Senators Baldwin and Furphy. Senator Baldwin, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Bills on second reading. Senate File 6, second reading of the Senate file. Reading clerk, please read in the.
Senate File 6, Public Works Contracting Requirements Amendments.
There are no amendments. Senate File 6, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 34, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 34, Born Alive Infant Means of Care.
There are no amendments. Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. Been talking with the governor's office anyway, and the sponsor and got an amendment coming we're working on, but we've got to finish it up. And so we respectfully ask it to be laid back one day.
Absent objection, second reading on Senate File 34 will be laid back one day. Thank you. Senate File 40, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 40, Wyoming Money Transmitters Act Amendments.
There are no amendments. Senate File 40, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? The file be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 79, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 79, Medicaid Billing for School-Based Services.
There is an amendment. Would you read in the amendment?
Senate File 79, second reading amendment number 1, page 6, lines 11 through 23, delete.
Senator Perkins, would you like to address this?
No, I don't. He's pulling amendments up. Oh, sure. I remember this one. Yeah. I'm trying really hard to be digital, and I'm caught betwixt and between, Mr. President, between being digital and paper. I'm not doing the transition well, I will admit, so I apologize. Mr. President, Mr. President, I'd move second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 79 and ask the body to vote aye. This was brought to me by staff. One of the standing committee amendments that we had that we put in the other day inadvertently left one of the appropriations in. This amendment was brought to me by staff, and so this lines out those appropriations and gets them squared away so that what we had in the amendment is what's in the bill, and we inadvertently in the First Amendment left one of the appropriations, so it's over appropriated. And so this gets it to the correct appropriation that was asked for. And so it really is just a technical amendment that was provided by staff. Ask for your favorable consideration, would stand for questions.
Question on the amendment? Any further discussion? All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Amendment passes. We are back on the bill. Senate File 79, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 83, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 83, Gillette Community College District.
Senate File 83, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Bills on 3rd and final passage. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, do you have a consent list? Go ahead.
I do, Mr. President. Move the 3rd reading consent list, which is as follows. Senate File 5, driving under the influence amendments. Senate File 9, state employee moving expenses. Senate File 13, abandoned vehicles, towing service liens and titles. Senate File 15, temporary licensing and permitting authority. 2, Senate File 19, public health emergencies, immunity amendments. Senate File 33, physicians assistance amendments. Senate File 44, solid waste cease and transfer program funding. Senate File 52, insurance, mental health and substance abuse parity. Senate File 82, local impact assistance payments. Senate File 88, ownerships of fossils and artifacts.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader, on my list, I show Senate File 82 has been removed.
Has been what?
Removed from the consent list.
Oh. Okay. Strike 82 off of the consent list. I don't show it on mine.
Yeah, it'll be on 3rd reading.
Right.
I think for the record, I'll repeat this then.
Always do anyway.
Would anyone like any of these bills removed from the consent list? We are clear that 82 is removed. Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass the Senate? Senate File 5, driving under the influence amendments. Senate File 9, state employee moving expenses. Senate File 13, abandoned vehicles, towing service liens and titles. Senate File 15, temporary licensing and permitting authority 2. Senate File 19, public health emergencies, immunity amendments. Senate File 33, physician assistance amendments. Senate File 44, solid waste cease and transfer program funding. Senate File 52, insurance, mental health, and substance use parity. And Senate File 88, ownership of fossils and artifacts. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
On the consent list, Anderson.
Aye.
Baldwin. Beitman. Boner. Bouchard. Case. Cooper. Driscoll.
Aye.
Ellis. French. Murphy. Aye. Garou. Hicks. Hutchings. James. Kinski. Kolb. Cost. Landon. McCune. Nethercott. Pappas. Perkins. Rothfuss. Salazar. Schuler. Scott. Steinmetz. Wasserberger. President Dockstader.
Aye.
On the consent list, 30 aye. Senate File 5. Are there any changes? Bouchard? Ida, no. Guru? Ida, no. Rothfuss? Ida, no. Schuler? Ida, no. Case? Ida, no. McCune? Ida, no. Hutchings? Ida, no. Whitman? Ida, no. Salazar? Ida, no. Steinmetz? Ida, no. Hicks? Ida, no. French? Ida, no. James? Ida, no.
Driscoll, I don't know.
Driscoll? Ida, no. Dockstader? Ida, no. Closing vote.
You'd stand.
Kolb? Ida, no. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 5, 14 aye, 16 no.
Senate File
Mr.
5.
President.
Oh, good. Okay, go ahead.
Hang on, hold on. There's an interim work down there.
Senate File 9, are there any changes? Steinmetz? Aye to no. Hutchings, aye to no. Ellis, aye to no. Boner, aye to no. Kinsky, aye to no. Beitman, aye to no. Bouchard, aye to no. McCune, aye to no. Salazar, aye to no. French,
This is gonna increase the
aye
cost
to
the
no.
state for mobile.
It does.
If you
Cole,
don't do- if you
aye
do-
to
if you
no.
do this, it doesn't
James,
really-
aye to no.
This is increasing the cost.
Closing vote.
It's like
Closing
let's kill interim.
vote closed. Senate File 9, 18 aye, 12 no. Senate File 13, are there any changes?
Well, at least there's one some-
Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 13, 30 aye. Senate File 15, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 15, 30 aye. Senate File 19, are there any changes? Closing vote. Whitman? Yes, sir. Aye to no. Whitman, aye to no. Bouchard, aye to no. Rothfuss, aye to no. James, aye to no.
I thought you dodged it.
McEwen, aye to no. Salazar, aye to no. French, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 19, 23 aye, 7 no. Senate File 33, are there any changes?
Conflict, Baldwin.
Closing vote,
He needs to conflict.
closing,
Baldwin, you need to conflict.
thank you.
Don't listen to him.
Baldwin conflict. Closing vote.
You're the peanut gallery, pretty soon nobody believes your real comments.
Closing vote closed. Senate File 33.
Thanks, Bob.
29 aye, 1 conflict. Senate File 44. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 44, 30 aye. Senate File 52. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 52, 30 aye. Senate File 88. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 88, 30 aye.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 9, Senate File 13, Senate File 15, Senate File 19, Senate File 33, Senate File 44, Senate File 52, Senate File 88 have passed the Senate. Senate File 5, having failed to receive the affirmative vote of the majority members elected to the Senate, has failed to pass the Senate. Continuing with third reading. Senate File 82, third reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 82, Local Impact Assistance Payments, sponsored by the Appropriations Committee. An act relating to impact assistance payments.
There is an amendment. Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 82. Local impact assessment impacts, assistance impacts. Members, we had a good debate on this yesterday, pretty robust. I'm not going to go over what all that this does, but I think this really does, this amendment strikes the balance. On one aspect, we're trying to reduce those payments because it does come one way or another, reduces the amount of money to the general fund. On the second hand, and the other side of it, it's a significant important to building the infrastructure within the state of Wyoming that has long-term returns, but it helps those local communities initially that are impacted. So, Mr. President, what the amendment does is just go in as the original bill went from 2.76% of those sales tax receipt went down to 2%, which was a 28% cut. What this does is do 2.5%. Or 2.25%, Mr. President. I think it is a reasonable compromise, given where we were at yesterday on the vote. I certainly support the idea that we need to reduce the level of available funding for this program, but I don't want to constrain those local governments that are going to get damaged if there's a large industrial project in their vicinity. So I'd stand for any questions, and if there's no questions, I'd ask for your favorable consideration on Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to Senate File 82.
Questions on third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 82? Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Question on the amendment where looks like we skipped a part where we're deleting some language here. I'd like an explanation on, looks like we're going into page 6, lines, 13 through 18 roughly, and deleting a paragraph. So some explanation on what that does and what the purpose of that is in the amendment. Thank you, sir.
Gather up some more questions before you come back, Mr. Hicks. Senator Hicks, any further questions or discussion? Senator Perkins.
Thank you. Still struggling with technology. I was trying to pull up the amendment, but ultimately, Mr. President, for the amendment, after we had a great debate yesterday, I've been around long enough to know that sometimes when a second reading amendment fails and that close of a margin, that oftentimes the next day you find that the bill is defeated because people have changed their mind or they feel strongly about that. And I think that would be a real shame for the very reasons that the good senator from Bags just said. I mean, sometimes you just take, you come to a compromise because ultimately this will have the effect of reduce the amount of available funding, but still recognizes that there are significant impacts. And this is a bill that is important enough, I think, to go over that. Again, it does reduce the amount and the exposure of the general fund of those things, but also tries to find that, gets closer to, I think, the sweet spot of local governments and their need for assistance in meeting these unmitigated impacts. Additionally, I think that you'll just find that I think that there's also a strong message that I think has also been sent to the to the Industrial Siting Council, that as they award these things, they'll make sure that they're a little bit deeper and that the awards they make will be more justified. And so overall, I think it'll just sharpen up that process, but still makes available when there's additional funds that they're available to help out those communities and counties with the infrastructure that is needed. And so I urge your favorable consideration and support of this amendment.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and in favor of the amendment in its entirety. I think that I've said many times before, the definitions part of this bill are very important to give proper guidance to Industrial Siting Council. Even though I've been fairly skeptical of the amount that's been distributed to local government, I think that increasing the cap is a good compromise, and especially when we're relying on the definitions to get us to where we need to be. And along those lines, with the other element of this bill or this amendment that my colleague from Sheridan County questioned, I think that's very important. It goes in there and deletes the exclusion that basically says that you cannot account for all the impacts on the infrastructure. So the example that comes to my mind is, say, a county road that's maintained at a certain level for a very relatively small amount of traffic. That road's going to be key to whatever the big project is, going to have a lot of truck traffic. It has to be upgraded beyond just accounting for the wear and tear. That they have to upgrade the road to actually say account for some large semi-truck traffic, whereas normally it's just been a bunch of pickup trucks maybe going back and forth. I think that's obviously an impact on local infrastructure, even though it means improving the infrastructure so it can actually handle and have the capacity to handle the industrial activity. So I think that's a very good improvement to exclude that because I think it's clear that that's an impact of that would not otherwise be there without the industrial activities. So a very important part. I'm glad that we're striking that from the exclusions, but certainly leave it to the sponsor of the amendment to speak for his rationale. But I think that all elements of this amendment improve the bill.
Further comment or question before we go back to the sponsor? Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, and I'm not going to belabor this, but I apologize for not getting to that on page 6 in the exclusion. This is a provision here, when we write statutes and laws, the clearer that we can make them and the less ambiguous they are, the higher likelihood that they were going to be implemented in the fashion that we intended, not necessarily the way it was wrote. This has always been problematic in the wording in here, but I think my colleague from over in the eastern part of the state, the good chairman of the Ag Committee, this is the reason that exclusion's in here. This is still pretty ambiguous and not clear. So I want to read it to you. It says, expenses related to improvements to existing structures beyond that necessary to return the structure to the condition in which the structure existed before the construction of the industrial facility. Can somebody please explain to me what that is? That's the problem. I think I know what it means, but I'm not sure I know what it means. But let's put that in the context of a bridge. So in my neck of the wood, they start rolling in these 100-foot long semi trucks and trailers. They got to haul all these parts for these wind turbines in. And that little county bridge that used to have a 10-ton limit on it, it ain't going to get there. So it's a county road. The county's had to go in here and make significant improvements to that bridge to facilitate that to happen. The way I read that is the county would not be able to do that if it required that once that was done, you had to restore it back and you couldn't spend any more on it. But quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, I'm still not sure exactly what it says. So more than anything else, given the problem that we've historically had with the Industrial Siding Council, is a lack of clear and concise direction of what the context of as an unmitigatable impact is. That has been historically the problem. I think this clears up that we don't have that problem going forward on the exclusion. So that's all we're trying to do is, in my mind, is clear up very ambiguous language in the statute that I don't think provides the Industrial Siding Council the exact information they need to make a decision on that provision. And I do concur with what the good chairman of the Ag said is it's almost impractical in some cases dealing with roads and bridges. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. This amendment deals with the appropriation, so we'll have a roll call vote. Chief Clerk, take the roll.
Third reading amendment number 1, Senate File 82. Anderson.
Aye.
Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. No. Case. Aye. Cooper. Aye. Driscoll. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Furphy. Aye. Guru. Aye. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. James. No. Kinski. Aye. Cole. Aye. Cost. Aye. Landon. Aye. McCune. Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Perkins. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. No. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. Wasserberger. Aye. President Dockstader. Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed on the amendment. 27 aye, 3 no.
The amendment has passed the Senate. We are back on the bill, Senate File 82, Local Impact Assistance Payments. Are you ready for the question? Question being called. Senate File 82, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? The Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Anderson.
Aye.
Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Case. Aye. Cooper. Aye. Driscoll. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Furphy. Aye. Guru. Aye. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. James. Aye. Kinski. Aye. Cole. Aye. Cost. Aye. Landon. Aye. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. No. Pappas. Aye. Perkins. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. No. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. Wasserberger. Aye. President Dockstader.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Ellis, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 82, 27 aye, 3 no.
Senate File 82, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 82 has passed the Senate. Consideration of bills on general file. Mr. Majority Floor Leader. We are at that order of business, consideration of bills on general file. ahead.
Mr. President, I move the Senate resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion is carried. Senator Steinmetz, you've got the head desk.
I'll take it off. I don't think we get to it. We get to close on.
The Committee of the Whole will please come to order. The first Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 72. The reading clerk will please read the Senate file.
Senate File 72, Financial Counsel and Reporting Budget Reductions, an act relating to administration of government sponsored by the Appropriations Committee. Was referred to Committee number 2, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Guru, Hicks, Kinski, Perkins, and Steinmetz. Senator Perkins, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the Senate file. What is your pleasure? Chairman Perkins.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, I move with the committee whole rise report to do so with a favorable recommendation on Senate File 72, Financial Counsel Reporting and Reporting Budget Reductions. For an explanation of that bill, I call on the good Vice President.
Senator Hicks.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, Senate File 72, call a reduction in government bureaucracy bill. This was brought to us by the state auditor. This is a good little bill. Don't let it fool you. It's a good little bill. What it does is it goes in and it removes the preliminary financial reporting requirements and it repeals the Financial Advisory Council. So let me just walk you through why we're doing it. So the removing the preliminary financial reporting requirement known as CAFRA, the Comprehensive Annual Finance Report. This is the preliminary report. Now, what we found out from the auditor is they do this, but usually they don't have nearly the amount of information because it's currently required to be submitted in September. So they put something together that doesn't reflect the entire last quarter of the year. So it's practically worthless. So this just goes in and it eliminates that. And then it also eliminates and repeals the Financial Advisory Council, which has only met twice in the last 10 years. And it was deemed it was probably just not something that we needed anymore. So, Madam Chairman, I would ask for your favorable consideration of an aye vote on Senate File 72, and I'd stand for any questions.
Are there any questions on the bill? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senator Perkins' motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 72, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Senate File 72 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 70. Would the reading clerk please read the bill?
Senate File 70, Fingerprinting Fees, an act relating to criminal history records, sponsored by Senator Schuler. It was referred to Committee number 3, which earned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Case, Pappas, and Schuler. No, Senator James. Senator Case, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the Senate file. What is your pleasure? Chairman Case.
Hi, Madam Chairman.
Hello
Welcome
there.
back to the Wyoming Senate. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rise to report that it do so with a do pass recommendation on Senate File 70, fingerprinting fees. There is a standing committee amendment and I'd ask to be read it at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that is Senate File 70. You are exactly right. And would the reading clerk please read in the amendment?
Senate File 70, Standing Committee Amendment number 1, page 1, line 14, delete.
And Madam Chairwoman, I would move
Mr.
the standing
Chairman.
committee amendment to Senate File 70 And for discussion of the bill and the amendment, I'd ask that you yield to Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This bill I thought might be the quickest one of the day, but after the last bill, I don't think I can get through this quite as quick. This is a pretty simple bill, though. This is a bill that was a request from our law enforcement officers. And just to give you a little background, anytime you have to have a non-criminal justice search, they need to have a fingerprinting card. And this time, the card takes quite a bit of time to do because we have to take a law enforcement person, off the street. They have to come in, they have to show the person that's wanting one, get a government ID or a passport. They have to fill out paperwork, and then they start taking fingerprints. They're required to fill out 3 separate fingerprint cards. And once in a while, they have to redo those basically because some people, based on their age or their genetics or their occupation, sometimes they have a tough time getting a good print. They do have something they can use to try to help out with the prints to get a little bit better print. But some agencies use the live scan machine, and one of my colleagues asked about if our area used that, and they don't. But that's a nice thing. If some law enforcement agencies may want to try looking at some of those, they're fairly expensive, but it would probably be done a lot quicker to use those rather than the old time prints that they're doing now. But anyway, when using ink and paper, the agency has to wait for the cards to be reviewed by a fingerprint analyst, and then they'll determine if they're good quality. And then DCI requires 2 of those cards. And that way, one of them hopefully will have a good set of prints. It's a time-consuming service, basically, but we only charge $5. And what I was told was that certain occupations like bankers and teachers sometimes are the worst to try and get good prints, not because they're crooked, but they work with a lot of paper. So their prints aren't very good, and sometimes it makes it a little harder to get their prints. Also, if you are in an occupation where you work around chemicals and various construction things where you use your hands a lot, it's sometimes tough to get a print also. So the $5 fee is just for the fingerprinting service. And then again, if they need to check on the criminal arrest or conviction records, those kinds of things, then they do charge an additional fee. But most of the time, the fingerprint card is just used in the non-criminal element for people that work with youth or teachers or bankers or, firemen, policemen. There's a lot of different occupations that need it. I did have a question during our committee meeting about who has to pay for it. And again, if someone is arrested and the suspect has to be fingerprinted as part of the arrest process, then those fingerprints are submitted to DCI at no cost. But for the non-criminal process, which this bill basically refers to, the person or the agency that requests it would be the ones that would pay. And some applicants pay the $5 fee, and some, for instance, if you're going to be a teacher, the district that you're applying to may pay that fee for you. It kind of depends on the organization. But anyway, the bottom line is we're taking our law enforcement officers off the streets and away from their normal duties to do these. And it is a service that they do provide, and it's a good service. But it takes a lot of time. And just to put it in perspective, if any of you have been in to get a VIN inspection takes you about 10 minutes, and then we charge $10 for that. So I think the difference there is we're really not getting our bang for our buck. Now, obviously, if they have to do more background checks or if it's FBI issues or those kinds of things, then it requires additional fees. But for the most part, this fee, it goes into the general fund. And it's just that we're not really getting, I guess, the bang for our buck is the best way I can explain it from our law enforcement people. I think as we go through the next few years with budget cuts and a shortage of officers and those kinds of things, I think the fee really did need to go up. And so that's the gist of the bill. And let's go ahead and talk about the standing committee amendment if it's been read in, but I'd like to move it. Or you already moved it, didn't you, Senator Case? Sorry. But just an explanation on that. In comparing other states, kind of looked around at some other states, we're woefully behind in what we charge versus other states. The amounts that I found anywhere went from about $22 to about $50. And there's one state far east of us that charges about $100 for the same service. So at our standing committee meeting, we had an amendment to bump the $10 up to $15, and that's really what all the amendment does. I think it's pretty reasonable, and I think it still puts us behind many of the states that are around us. But I'm happy to answer any questions you have on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Schuler. We are on the Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to Senate File 70. Are there any questions on the amendment? Senator, oh, no.
My apologies.
Okay, all right. All right, sensing you're ready for the question, all those in favor of Senator Schuler's or Case's motion to adopt the Standing Committee Amendment to Senate File 70, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
No.
The amendment has failed. Division being called, all those in favor of the Standing Committee Amendment, please stand. Okay, all those opposed, please stand. I guess you guys are very loud. The amendment has passed. We are back on the bill. Are there any questions on the bill? Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do have a question. With some of the testimony that was provided for the justification of it, it has to do with the cost of the experience and the work that goes along with doing the fingerprinting. But the language within where it goes then still suggests that it all goes back just to the general fund or to the local general funds. So I guess my question is, how does this increase in fees actually address successfully the problems that were described when it doesn't appear to provide additional funding to the entity that has to run the fingerprints?
Thank you, Mitch. I had a quick question with regard to the fee. I, in my previous career, used this service quite a bit for background checks for what I did. I would simply go into the sheriff's office. They would fingerprint me without any fees to me. And quite frankly, I didn't see any type of time-consuming problems for someone like myself or another person doing that. I guess my question is this, does law enforcement want this? Maybe you could address that. Thank you. Matt.
Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. It seems like this is kind of a circular fund where it's going to an agency from the state, and then we're putting it back in the general fund. So it's just like a going, coming, going, coming. Can you explain that to me?
Senator Schuler, how about we go to you to answer a few of those
Okay.
and see if we have more.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just go backwards because I hopefully I won't forget the first two. But yeah, on page 2 of the bill, it basically just says it'll be credited to the state general fund or to the general fund of the appropriate county or municipality. So again, I don't know if DCI, the way they charge things versus the county versus the city, if that goes in their coffers and then it has to go to the general fund and back to them. I have to admit that's a question I probably don't know the answer to, and I probably could find out easy enough. The second question was law enforcement. Yes, they're the ones that approached me and just said it takes them a bit of time. And I think probably the rush is maybe in the fall when we have a lot of new teachers necessarily, or new youth people that are working in some of our youth services. And so they get kind of quite a few folks wanting to have this done. And it seems like, they can go to the county, they can go to the city, they can go to other places to have it done. But it just seemed like it was our chief of police that actually approached me first. And then I also got contacted by the county as well, because I left a message there to ask them if they've been seeing the same problems. They don't have as much of a backlog, but it seems like the city folks are the ones that kind of get pounded the most with this. And it's not that they mind doing it, but they just said, gosh, we're charging $5. It takes us a bit of time. And if you think about an officer, I don't know, maybe a young officer, you might only be making $20 an hour or maybe 30, but it's just not a really good use of their time if they have 5 or 6 folks and they're trying to, do all these fingerprints and they're away from their post and they're away from, their number one cause, I think, is to protect our communities. And so I thought it was a very valid concern. And the third one was, I might have to ask you the third question. Do you remember what it was?
How does it get from general fund back there?
Oh, and that's the question I don't really have the answer to. Like I said, I should have probably checked on. I know that we figured out there were probably, less than 2,000 of these done a year. So it's not like a lot of money that's coming in, but I suppose, as we said before, any amount is great to have put into our general fund or within our own cities or counties. So it's not, the whole idea of this is not just to, bump up a fee, just to bump up a fee, but it's more or less the time constraints on our law enforcement people. So I hope that answered those questions, but thank you.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is a committee of the whole amendment. May I have that read in?
Yes, would the reading clerk please read the amendment?
Senate File 70, Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1, page 1, line 2, after.
Senator Nethercott.
Madam Chair, I would move Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 70. Good senators, you have heard testimony concerning the need and the increasing volume of fingerprinting fees associated with different occupations and professions and background checks. But one unique group of people in our state that do need these fingerprints for purposes of background checks, but aren't doing it for purposes of their occupations, but rather are doing it for purposes of families and adopting children. And so I was approached by some constituents who, walking through that process, realized just how expensive it is to do adoptions, and constantly turning around and paying additional fees for different parts of the process simply to have an opportunity to adopt a child. And so I thought this was a small way that we can alleviate some of those costs, because as we raise the fees, and of course, both parents have to go through that fee and they have to do it 3 times, most times, and sometimes more, depending on the agency. That's about an additional $45 fee for them. And of course, we're not talking about a significant sum of money, but in a tens of thousands of dollars that they're having to be expended. This is one small way that we can support those Wyoming families. And so I'd ask for your favorable consideration on Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 70.
Seeing none, are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Nethercott's motion to adopt the Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 70, please say aye. All those opposed, no. The amendment passes. We are back on the bill. We're back on the bill. Senator Scott.
Madam Chairman, I'm rising really to ask for some legal help on this one. It appears to me that this bill is strictly to increase fees. I don't see anything else going on in this bill. Article 3, Section 33, origin of revenue bills. All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives. This is not the House of Representatives. Now, Madam Chairman, we have always allowed, and I've never heard of the courts objecting to you have a bill to create some new function. There's a fee to recover administrative costs. We've always allowed that in the Senate. This is not of that nature. This is simply raising a fee. The fee here appears to be going to not the state, but to the political subdivisions of the state primarily, or maybe entirely, the cities and the counties. That doesn't strike me as it gets out of the requirements of Article 3, Section 33. So, Madam Chairman, my inclination is to vote against this bill because it's violating this particular provision in the Constitution. And I'm asking legal counsel, I think the courts have probably been tolerant of this sort of thing. They've tended to ignore this requirement, but the Senate has not. And what is the justification for this as a bill raising revenue for our political subdivisions, but a bill still raising revenue as a Senate file?
Further discussion on the bill? Senator Perkins.
No, not raising either on or against the bill, but just on that discussion, I think that there's two things that I think potentially make a difference. And you may feel it's a distinction now, the difference, but ultimately you get to reflect that in your own feelings and your own vote. As I understand it, there's two reasons why I think that this bill is not, I think it may snuggle up to, but that doesn't cross the constitutional line. And that is, the two reasons are, one is there's always been a differentiation between a tax and what is actually a revenue raiser, and then a something that is simply offsets a cost or something like that. And so it's whether or not it's really a revenue raiser. And so the courts have made some distinctions between a fee for a service kind of a thing, as opposed to the reimburses a cost, as opposed to a revenue enhancement. That one, but the other one is and is that this simply increases the maximum allowable that is chargeable. It doesn't require that the fee be charged. And as we just heard testimony from a moment ago from our good friend in the was it the Valley of the Friendly Wind? Is that what Du Bois is the Valley of the Friendly Wind? So the Valley of the Friendly Wind indicated that he went in and there was no service charged. There's no fee charged. And so whether or not it raises revenue, it may or may not raise revenue. It depends on whether it's charged. It simply allows the maximum, doesn't require that a fee be charged, but simply allows the maximum. It raises the amount of the maximum fee that can be charged. So it may or may not raise revenue. And the intent is, you look at the fiscal note, the total amount of anticipated revenue increase of this is $8,000. So I guess it all adds up after a while. But anyway, that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Senator Hicks.
Madam Chairman, if I can just put a fine point on this one, because I keep this right on my laptop for this purpose, because of my colleague from Natrona County has trained me very well on this question. So this is a memo, but it says U.S. Supreme Court and U.S. versus Norton held that revenue bills have been confined to bills to leveled taxes in the strict sense of the word and have not been understood to extend to bills for other purposes, which incidentally create revenue. In addition, the Wyoming Attorney General's office opined that revenue bills are only those whose primary purpose is to raise revenue for the general expenses or obligations of the government, rather than bills that just raise revenue. If you would like that, I can send that to you and everybody can put it on their laptop. Thank you for training me so well, my colleague from Natrona County.
Senator James.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just like to make an observation here is that I highly doubt that the officer, that the department's going to pull an officer off the street just to take a fingerprint, and that they would probably have some sort of administrator at the office that's qualified to take fingerprints. So taking someone away to serve and protect our community, just take fingerprints is highly unlikely. So I just don't see that happening. So raising the fee to compensate for that, I just don't see that happening. Thank you.
Senator Scott.
Madam Chairman, let me comment on two of the points I've heard. I've heard the argument before on that Attorney General's opinion, and frankly, I don't think the opinion is valid. I think they're ignoring the plain language of the Constitution. And this is a pretty pure bill in that respect. I am, however, persuaded that it does, with the way it's structured, if the revenue has to be raised, then subsequently, we're simply enabling the subdivision to do something, and they're the ones that actually do the revenue raising. I think that maybe does cover this circumstance and make this appropriate. I would have quite more reservations if we were just mandating the increase, but that does not appear to be what's happening here.
Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm perplexed. So my question is, this does raise revenue and it does go to the general fund. And even if it costs us more than the revenue that it generates, that just means we're inappropriately spending the revenue. We're overspending. It's still revenue. This is like saying it's not theft because it was only $10. But if it was going to raise $1,000 or we're going to steal $1,000, then it's theft. I agree with the tall senator from Natrona County. This is, to me, very simple, a constitutional violation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the fact that this does raise revenue, are we going to have to call for the ayes and noes on this?
Our
Okay.
chief clerk is saying no.
Okay. Well, I'm going to call him anyway, so. No? Just kidding. Just checking to see if you guys are on your toes. Have a good day.
Thank you.
I'm here all day.
Thank you, Senator Beitman, and lots of people on their feet. Senator Ellis, we haven't heard from you yet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just reading this again. It's a pretty simple bill. It says, may charge a reasonable fee of not more than $5 is the current language. So this would increase it. I don't see this as a mandate that it will be $10 or $15. I see this may charge a reasonable fee, and it sets a cap on the upper limit of what your law enforcement agency might want to charge. So if someone can help me understand that permissive part of it, maybe the tall senator from Natrona County.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, one idea I had with this bill, so we're not doing this again in somebody's doing it again in a period of years, is to just strike any reference to an amount and allow each agency, to charge a reasonable fee. And recognizing that those are elected positions in the county sheriff's offices and, some more burdensome on some other agencies or others. And we eliminate this maybe micromanagement, which we love to do. And clearly we like to discuss. I'm not sure this conversation is even worth the people's money for the $5 difference. But nonetheless, we shall move forward with it. But one consideration of maybe second reading amendment, and there's no more revenue generator. They're just authorized to assess a reasonable fee. Something for consideration.
Senator Perkins.
Thank you. Just to go back and rebut one point that's been made. So this is, the bill particularly talks about criminal justice agencies, and I'm from the Windy City at the center part of the state, and that's probably right. You walk in and there's somebody who can take that fingerprint, and it's just not a big deal. That ain't so in Shoshone. I think Shoshone has 2 policemen. Go to Niobrara County. I think the sheriff's office in Niobrara County has 5 officers, and there may, so you get in some of these small communities, you do have to make arrangements to come in some of these small communities, arrange to find a deputy that may be on patrol in that area. There's times when sometimes it's not just, it just takes 5 seconds. Sometimes it actually is a bit of an effort to do that. And so, whether you, aside from the revenue question, one of the reasons why you do this is because if there can be instances where one government agency imposes this inconvenience on the other government agency, and unless there's some equalization ability to charge a fee, even though it's small, you're affecting this law enforcement agency's budget. You're impacting it. And unless there's a fee that charges, you get to do that for free. So maybe $5 is not enough. Maybe $10 is not enough. Maybe $15 is too much. But at the end of the day, it does impact that. And when you've got all the people standing up, one thing you know is you don't stand up till we're finished, and then you get to stand up. So it makes a difference. People have to live within their budgets. And whether it's this or in some other instances, it's not quite fair to transfer your expenses and what's required for you because of your agency. And so you have to impose on somebody else and they get to do it for free. And there's no impact to their budget, but there is to the people who have to provide that service. So in some respects, whether, this is very nominal, but the general principle is that there is impacts. And in some cases, there's no impact. And you'd hope that there would be no fee charged, because in the big windy city in the middle of the state, you're right. There's a clerk there that can do that. They do that all the time and it's not a big deal. Other places, it may be a bigger deal and it may be absolutely fair to charge a fee. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do agree with the good senator that had just previously spoken. I don't have all the catch names down yet. In Sweetwater County, I can tell you the staff in the sheriff's office does it. And obviously in that particular case, they've already got staff there. They don't have to call anybody in. And they do utilize electronic fingerprinting procedures, not just the cards most of the time. I just want to talk about an affected group that maybe no one's spoken about here. And anybody wanting to represent gun owners, such as myself, anybody who goes off for any ATF tax stamps has to send in multiple fingerprint cards. I mean, lots of them. Silencers, short barrel shotguns, short barrel rifles, machine guns, whatever you can think of that's it requires a tax stamp, requires multiple fingerprints. So there's lots of cards. Just wanted to throw that out there as an affected group of people that are not criminals, that have done nothing wrong, but complying with federal regulations. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kolb. Senator Schuler, we'll let you finish us up here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Gosh, I thought this was going to be a 15-minute bill. This is exciting. Anyway, no, it's good discussion. I appreciate all of it and appreciate all of your questions. I would say this, though, in my county, there's at least 2 cities that have very small departments, 2 or 3 policemen. That's about the extent of it. And usually one of them is off duty. Sometimes 2 of them are off duty at a time. So they do have to bring in people to do what needs to be done. In the city I live in, they have a few more folks that can do that. But I just want to kind of tie in with a couple different thoughts. I wouldn't be opposed to a friendly amendment from the good senator from Laramie County if that's the burn with some of the folks. But it was mainly just the fact that law enforcement, they're providing a service that they have to provide when it's asked for. And I think the good senator from Natrona County hit the nail on the head with this. But I just want to just raise the one question that, when you buy a car and you have to take it in for your VIN inspection, that's $10 out of your pocket. You can choose not to pay it, but you can choose, then you're choosing not to get licensed. So that we pay fees all the time. If you think about all the different fees that we pay at our county and city level. And so I didn't think this was really something out of the realm that our law enforcement was asking for. And but I would be open to a friendly amendment down the road. So I hope you'll pass this bill and we can maybe have some more good discussion on it. Thank you very much.
Well, now that this good little bill has left its fingerprint on our day, all those in favor of Senator Case's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 70, say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. Senate File 70 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 71. The reading clerk will please read the bill.
Senate File 71, Strategic Investments in Projects Account Repeal, an act relating to public funds sponsored by the Senate Appropriations Committee. Was referred to Committee number 2, Appropriations, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Guru, Hicks, Kinsky, Perkins, and Steinmetz. Senator Perkins, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the Senate file. What is your pleasure, Chairman Perkins?
Madam Chairman, I move the committee of the whole rise to report it, do so with a favorable recommendation on Senate File 71, Strategic Investments and Projects Account Repeal. And for an explanation of this bill, there is an amendment. Why don't we go ahead and read? No, we'll do that. Well, that's a committee of the whole amendment. We'll deal with that later. So for an explanation of the bill, would you please call upon the good Vice President?
Vice President Hicks.
Madam Chairman, members of the Senate, earlier I handed out a schematic for you because that is the bill. And rather than trying to explain all of it, which I'm going to do anyway, this illustrates it. So let me talk about what this bill does. It repeals the Strategic Investments and Project Account. That's the last time I'm going to say that. The acronym of SIPA. So let me tell you that the SIPA was created in 2013 at a time when the legislature was still dealing with very large surpluses in our budget. And the thought process at the time then is that maybe we ought to create a special account for large projects. It did allow for the governor to profile and make recommendations to be able to profile those and recommendations to spend out of that account. But that was really the genesis of it in 2013, was to try to set that aside. But it's become over the years a little bit problematically. We no longer have hundreds of millions of dollars of surpluses. It's general fund money. That's where it starts. And then it kind of flows through the Rube Goldberg machine, which is how your budget works today. And part of the impetus was also to increase transparency in state budgeting and expenditures. So somebody could actually get on and figure out that the state of Wyoming might have a checking account, we might have a savings account, and we might have a reserve account, but we don't have a couple of 2 or 3 more accounts, and then some diversions out of that. So what this really is attempting to do is just simplify the budget. So we're just going to put the general funds are going to stay back up in the general funds. They won't flow into the LSRA, and then 2.5% of that flows into the SIPA. And then once it flows into the SIPA, part of it's then allocated into school major maintenance accounts. And then part of it goes into the Wyoming State Penitentiary Capital Account, and then can flow into the legislative deficit control account. This just pulls it back and simplifies it. But probably the best explanation of the bill is to flip it to the back and go to the fiscal note. So if you would do that, this bill repeals 4 accounts. You don't have the, no, not on the schematic, on the bill. On the bill.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you. So those that don't have the hard copy, you'll want to go to where it says fiscal note along the top of the tabs on the electronic copy. And that's what the good Vice President's referring to. If you don't have the hard copy with you, you don't have a fiscal note pulled up on the PDF, you have to go to the fiscal note sheet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
To you, Senator Hicks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And normally members, and particularly those new members, you would have that in your desk drawer in the hard copy, but we're all trying to learn as we go here. So if you would bear with me. But what the fiscal note just says is we're going to go in here and we're going to repeal the Strategic Investment Projects account, the Wyoming State Penitentiary Capital Construction account, the school major maintenance account, which is a sub-account in the SIPA, and the legislative deficit control account. If you go down a little bit further, and this will go into effect July 1st of 2022, because that's the first day in the fiscal year of the next biennium. So this doesn't go into effect, so it won't happen right away because we've appropriated out of the SIPA account. I don't know that we have any appropriations. We do have money that will flow into the major maintenance account. So what happens once we repeal this? In the SIPA, any money that's hasn't been earmarked in any of these other 3 or 4 accounts will just revert back to the general fund. Currently, it's anticipated that that could be about $40.6 million. And then in the Wyoming State Prisons Capital Construction Account, about $40.5 million. There's an amendment, we'll talk about that. It will maintain that account, but that account will then move into the LSRA. And then we have the school major maintenance account. Any funds that are in that account at the time when we repeal this and that goes into effect, those funds will be transferred right into the school capital construction account where we have the major maintenance fund anyway. So it consolidates all of our major maintenance for our schools into that school capital construction instead of having a couple of different pots of monies out there. The Legislative Deficit Control Act, there's currently 0 in. That was created, I believe, in 2018. There never has been any money in there. And that just goes away. If there was any balance, it would transfer back up to the general fund also. So members, again, I think this is consistent with what we want to do is to increase transparency in our budgeting. I think this goes a long ways to accomplish that rather than an obfuscation. So you know, as members, you even have the option, if you want a project, you're either going to fund it out of the general fund or the LSRA. That's where the money's going to come from at this point in time, once we get back to a normal schematic. Anyway, with that, Madam Chairman, I would stand for any questions. There is a committee of the whole amendment. If there's no questions, could we have that read in at this time?
Please, would the reading clerk please read in the standing committee amendment?
Senate File 71, Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1, page 4, line 10, after.
Madam, for an explanation of that committee of the whole amendment, could you please call on the good chairman?
Chairman Perkins.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. What this amendment was, again, kind of was brought to me by our budget and fiscal staff. And they pointed out this, that the Wyoming State Penitentiary Capital Construction Account has been, I think we've made 1 deposit, maybe 2 deposits into that over time. That this was to begin saving for a new penitentiary. Doesn't stop that, but ultimately my point is simply in doing that's been a savings account, and that has been invested as part of the what's called Pool A, and so it's been invested in it's been invested by the Treasury. It's been invested in some equities and some other things that's what you invest those types of funds in. And if without the amendment, what would happen is that would just roll back into that would require those to be sold on the date that this becomes effective, and regardless of what's going on with the market. And that would just take this, what had been in savings, just roll it in to the general fund. There may be a gain, there may be a loss, who knows? What this amendment does is it goes back and simply it takes that and just puts that, instead of putting the general fund, it just puts it in another savings account, the LSRA, which is oftentimes referred to as the rainy day account. By doing that, it won't require necessarily that those whatever securities are being held by that's invested and be sold on that day, and they can just continue in savings. It doesn't go anywhere. But it seemed to me that when they brought that, they didn't recommend that we do this. They just said that's a problem, a potential problem. Would you want a draft amendment about that? Yes, please do. It seemed reasonable to me. There's no reason that all of a sudden there'd just be another 10 million in the general fund that seems available to be spent, and it just going from one savings account and putting in another savings account. Still would get rid of the SIPA, just it puts that section would put in the LSRA. That's what the amendment does. And with that, I'll stand for questions on the amendment.
We are on the amendment. Are there any questions on the amendment? Senator Landon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate the good chairman actually answering part of the question that I've had in my mind about this bill, and that is over the last couple of years, we've tried to become a little bit more aggressive in what we do with some of our reserve funds. And so in my mind was, what are we going to do? We pull these out of funds. I think a couple of them were in a more aggressive account. And then if we're going to pull them into the LSRA, my understanding is there's a benchmark of how much of the LSRA we're allowing ourselves to be more aggressive with. So what exactly, I think I understand the amendment, but what does it do with respect to, are we maintaining our ability to maximize the return of our monies as we close down these accounts? Thank you.
Any more questions on the amendment? Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is regarding this account. We're moving it to become an account within account again, which is what we're trying to get away from. How long will this account remain in the LISRA as a sub-account before it goes away? Or is it just going to be there until we come back and wipe it eventually?
Senator Hicks.
Madam Chairman, so it's really, I'll take the first stab at it, and then when I need a lifeline, I'll throw it over here to the smart guy. Anyway, the only one that would be currently invested in a higher level of returns would be that prison account. And I'm not sure exactly how that, but it's anticipated that all those other funds in SIPA, historically, we've drained that every year. So they're going to be in the very lowest return pool A or whatever that pool is, because until last year, when this body rejected the capital construction account, that money would have gone to zero. And then it backfalls as the revenues come in, would have flowed back in here. So those have always been very, very, if they were invested, short-term investments. Now in the capital construction account for prisons, because that's a savings account, and I'll have to get the absolute answer. I don't know if the chairman does or not, but we're going to probably put that in LISRA. It'll still have those restraints, but I'm going to throw that over to the lifeline.
Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If you're, for those who were here, if you might remember, and those who weren't here a few years ago, we actually took and either, I can't remember if we bifurcated or trifurcated the LISRA account. We've got, right now, I think we've got 1.2 or 1.3 billion in the LISRA account, and it was in what was called was basically invested as part of the common agency pool. And so there was always these liquidity issues. And so it never got invested in things that provided much of a return. And so we bifurcated that account and allowed a significant portion of the LSRA to be invested in what's called Pool A as a part of Pool A. And Pool A was what we not only did the legislation do that, but we also provided Pool A that those could be invested in these equities and along with the other types of investments that you find in the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund and the Common School Permanent Land Fund and some of the other funds that we've got. And so, the direct answer to the question is this will go in and this will be included in the LSRA, and that'll be invested as part of the Pool A, which is where it's invested now, only now instead of in a penitentiary prison, thank you, prison capital construction account. It'll be it'll easy for him to say. Anyway, it'll be invested in this Pool A. So ultimately it'll be invested, and that's how we know that it can be continued to be invested for that return. With respect to what you read in this bill, the prison construction account continues on just long enough within the LSRA to make sure that so if there's any unexpended funds or appropriations or expenses that I'm unaware of any, staff was unaware of any, but just in case there's some out there, it allows that, it holds that kind of so we know what that is, a sub-account if the LSRA until July 1st of 2022. At that time, the account goes away and it's just part of the LSRA. So it's just segregated as a sub-account with the LSRA long enough to ensure that there are no claims or commitments from that account and but so it, to the good senator, for my good friend from Sheridan, that's, you know, that's astute observation, but that sub account does go away on 7/1 of 2022, which will also be the time that if there's any funds that aren't in there, it'll be cut off. We don't think there any are, but it's just a bit, it's just a safety net, just in case there were some that we were unaware of that had been funded out of that account. So I think that answers the questions.
Seeing no further questions, we are going to vote on the amendment now. All those in favor of Senator Perkins' motion to adopt the Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to Senate File 71, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. The amendment has passed. We are back on the bill. Further discussion on the bill, Senator Landon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Sorry to draw this out. You know, I get it. This is an initiative, and so I understand that it's something that we're wanting to do. I just wondered from my colleagues on the Appropriations Committee if there was any conversation at all about doing this, or if it's just kind of been understood that we're gonna close accounts. I mean, I was thinking about all of us on a personal level. If we all just have one savings account and one checking account. I know I don't. We actually have an account that we try to set something aside for rainy days or for projects or for a trip to Hawaii, if we can ever go back there. Didn't mean to use a proper name, but my point is, I think there's some benefit in having an account or two. I get trying to streamline, but maybe a little more conversation about what's our ultimate goal? Is it to get down to the LISRA account, which is maybe the checking account, or I guess general fund would be checking and LISRA would be savings? And is that the goal? Do we want to just get down to 2? I'm just curious if there was a whole lot of debate or talk about it, or if we're just gonna go to 2.
Senator Guru.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In answer to the good senator's question, there was a lot of talk about it, and I know, you know, it is an initiative. It's an initiative of the chief executive downstairs. Matter of fact, he talked about it just yesterday about, you know, trying to streamline things and have one checkbook and one savings account. And that's, you know, transparency is something that we all desire. But for those of you who are concerned, while this would close off the SIP account, I will remind the body that we still have the spending policy reserve for the Common School Permanent Land Fund, which includes the CSPLF corpus, the CSPLF reserve account, the Common School Land Fund, School Foundation account. We also have the Excellence in Higher Education corpus, Higher Excellence in Higher Education reserve account, the Excellence in Higher Education income account, 2/3 of which goes to the University of Wyoming, 1/3 goes to community colleges. We also have the Hathaway Scholarship account, the Hathaway Reserve account. We also have the Hathaway Student Scholarship Expenditure account. 20% goes to the needs of scholarship, other 80% goes to other needs. So we're not quite there yet. And so we still have a ways to go. And if you'd like them, we could go to the goldenrod. No, I'll save that. We'll do that next week. But this is a step. And it's a very serious step. And I don't mean to make light of it, but somewhere, as it was explained, we did talk about this quite a bit. You know, years ago when we had billion-dollar surpluses, as far as the eye could see, this is ways that we could vector money off into certain projects. Especially if, you know, those of us who've been here a couple of years know that the prison was in bad shape. The doors wouldn't shut. The windows weren't going right, which we've been told in prisons is not a good thing. The prisoners seem to enjoy it, but everyone else was having a problem. And we figured out on the happy solution to have the roof not drain the water to the base of the building, which was making it settle. And all of a sudden things got better. And so we've settled that, but there still might be a couple of things. You know, there's a couple of roof problems, but a couple of things that need to be addressed. So while we're still working on that, we still have a ways to go. This is a step. I'm on and for the bill. I enthusiastically support it and hope you'll do the same.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Seeing no further oh, Senator Rothfuss, you snuck up on me.
I snuck up on you. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, I have a couple of concerns that I wanted to raise. And the first really is the idea of savings versus general fund expenditures and just the way we look at the cash flow. And I understand the need for simplification. We do have an awful lot of accounts, there's no question, and they've served good purposes over the years. And sometimes we need to get rid of them, and this might be the time for the SIPA. But one thing I guess I would caution is a bill like this that takes away the SIPA, but then in the end flows what was previously going into the SIPA, which was a savings account, into the general fund. It sort of helps us make it look like we're doing better when we're really not. And I guess that's one of the concerns I have, is anytime we're shifting from what would have gone to savings, like we do also with the statutory 1% from the severance tax, right? We're capturing that, we're spending it. So it makes things look a little bit better. And in a hard time, we want that money. But a few years pass and then you forget. That was supposed to be savings. That was supposed to be funds that went to savings for the long term, as opposed to short-term expenditures. So I guess one concept that I want to emphasize is that with the way this reworks the funding lines, even though we will be shifting balances into the LISRA, it's my understanding, and I'll ask, I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, correct me, but it's my understanding that the future revenue that would be going to the SIPA would then be going to the general fund. If I'm reading the lines correctly. If not, please stand up and say otherwise. If it's just all going into the LISRA over the long term, then it's savings to savings. But I think it's savings to expenditures as the bill's written. So that's the first concern I have, is just the idea that we might make ourselves feel a little bit better because it looks like there's more revenue, but in the end of the day, we're just shifting. And then the second concern I have really has nothing to do with the legislation, but it's something we've talked a little bit about over the years, and it's a concern that I still have. And it's with the mechanism of the sponsored by being Senate Appropriations Committee. And this is a process that's been used in recent years, but not very often. And over the years, it's been used occasionally, where a single chamber committee will sponsor legislation, but we really don't have any procedures or rules or approval process or vetting or how that exactly works. And there's nothing that says this bill couldn't have just been brought incidentally by the 5 members of that particular committee, right? It's the Senate Appropriations Committee that's supporting this legislation. Typically, that would just be a 5-person bill draft. What I'm afraid of is when we have this practice in place, and this year is hardly much of a problem. We've got 1 bill. I think last year we probably had 7 or something like that, or more. I'm getting a more signal from the former president. Maybe it was 20. And that's circumventing our standard process where we have bill limits, individual bill limits for general session at 7. Nobody's threatened here, so it's certainly not abusive this year by any stretch of the imagination. But if it were 20, that would be a bit of a problem. It also gives the appearance to the public that this is a vetted committee bill that went through the substantial interim committee process that we're used to going through to get that demarcation of this is a committee bill. So it suggests that there were hours of testimony and committee hearings and people weighing in and the public coming in and joining and driving in from all over the state, or Zooming as the case may be, over the last year to get that stamp of approval, committee bill, because we pass committee bills, right? 80% rate. Individual bills, 60% rate. I see one wonderful chairman that does not seem to agree with that number. But there's a reason why we put the committee stamp on. And again, I'm not asking anyone to change their opinion of this legislation based on it having Senate appropriations. It's the only time that I think we see that during this session. But from my own personal view, I want to stop seeing that. I want a committee bill to mean that it went through the full committee process, that it's joint, that it was vetted, that it has that stamp of approval for a good reason. And if the 5 members of the committee want to put their name on the same bill because they all agree with it, do it. But nothing special happened with this bill. It didn't go through its own hearing and get a vote. It's just a name that was put on the top, like mine or yours. And so that's a caution, that's a concern that I have. If nobody else has it, then no worries. But we want that brand to be meaningful. And I would say the brand was heavily diluted over the last couple of years through some previous actions. And I'd like that committee label to have as much meaning moving forward. So there's my other concern, Mr. Chairman. But overall, again, from a policy standpoint, voted up or voted down. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator Landon.
Madam Chairman, thank you. I just wanted to rise real quickly and thank my colleague from Teton County. Very good reminders of where our money goes. And, you know, I would liken some of those accounts to those electronic transfers that you do in your personal life. We have to pay for the university. We got to pay for the colleges. We've got money going over here for the prisons. So, you know, I certainly get that. And my only final thought to the body is just a little bit of a caution. I'm a really fiscally conservative guy. And it just makes me a little bit nervous when we begin to dump these accounts back into a general fund. I kind of have always liked the idea of setting aside some funding for some specific things because sometimes earmarks are not so bad. But I'm on and for the bill. I get it. I just wanted to throw that caution out, Madam Chairman, and I do appreciate a little bit of explanation and debate on the bill. Thank you.
Senator Cooper.
First of all, I'd like to thank the gentleman from west of Savory and some from somewhere out east of Manita for the hard work they've done on this. One thing we need to keep in mind as a state is we're going into a mode that we see very regularly in the private sector. We're seeing it very heavily right now in oil and gas. We see it consistently in the ag business, in the cattle business. It's called survival. And what we have to do is we have to draw these funds together, get them where they're available, make sure their returns on them are optimized. And these gentlemen have done a great job on that. I commend them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Perkins. Did you have something? Senator Scott, I didn't see you there. My apologies.
Madam Chairman, I want to pursue the issue that was raised by my distinguished colleague from Albany County with regard to the committee sponsorship of the bill. We used to do that periodically. I can remember doing it a number of times. We'd see a Senate Labor Committee bill or a Senate Corporations Committee bill. And there was at one point a specific provision, I think it was in the statutes governing the legislature that authorized that. And I don't see it, I can't find it there anymore. And did we, I think we may have repealed that provision at some time. So I'm interested and intrigued with seeing these Senate appropriations bills. I've got at least one I think might have been better as a committee bill that way. But it didn't appear to be available. So I'm interested in how they did it for future reference. It can be a useful technique. I would also say, Madam Chairman, that because we have given a preference to joint interim committee bills, we have seen everybody with a good idea try to come to the Joint Interim Committee and get a bill. And frankly, I think that's a mistake. I think a lot of those would be much better off as personal bills. And that the result is that a number of our interim committees have put out a number of bills that are labeled Joint Interim Committee that have not been properly worked by the Joint Interim Committee. And that's eroding the quality of that label considerably. And means that we've got to scrutinize some of the Joint Interim Committee bills a little extra carefully, because from certain committees, they have not been worked very properly. And Madam Chairman, that I think is a real concern as we evolve how we do things here, and something we ought to take quite seriously. Madam Chairman, I certainly support what they're doing here, but I am intrigued by how they managed to do it this way.
Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just a couple of points, and I think it, so let's start with the idea that this is a savings account. It's not. So pick up your flow. These are general fund monies, but then they start as general fund monies and then they flow down and they hit the split. Part of those general fund monies go into your savings account. The other part of those monies, 1.25% of fiscal year 97 million are general fund monies that goes in the SIPA account. One of the problems we're trying to rectify is the SIPA has been used as your second general fund budget for the last couple of years. If you go back to the original purpose was to set aside money for strategic projects. It's just become the second general fund for the Appropriations Committee to spend out of. So what we're trying to do is provide you transparency to see where your general fund monies are actually going. And if we don't want to do that, we can certainly do that. The Appropriations Committee knows how to spend out of the SIPA fund. So this is a benefit to the members of the body to see where that money's going for. And with regards to the prison capital construction account, that is a savings account. We're just moving it from the SIPA up into the LSRA. And on the issue of how did this get here as a Senate Appropriations Committee bill, I'm reminding of a story one time, and I think it was our good friend that used to sit over there that passed away, where the good majority floor leader told me. He said, I'll tell you, back, and I can't remember the name of the former legislator. He said he used to get up on floor and he'd say, here's the deal. Don't trust the Appropriations Committee. They know too much. So Senator Scott, we're not going to tell you how you do this. No, but let me, in all sincerity, this started out as the Joint Appropriations Committee. It was at a Joint Appropriations Committee. It was discussed at the Joint Appropriations Committee. And unfortunately, our colleagues on the other side of the house like having two general fund budgets. And we think that's wrong for the state of Wyoming. We agree with the executive branch of government. We need to be more transparent instead of flowing general funds through another general fund. Madam Chairman, this is about transparency. It's about fairness to everybody in the legislature to know where those monies come from and where they sit and how they're being spent instead of running it into another account. If maybe this isn't the best process, but there is a remedy to deal with if you don't want the Appropriations Committee. And we heard you last year loud and clear. So what did you see? I think this is probably one of only a couple that deal specifically to the budget issues that we tried to work through on that issue of Senate Appropriations Committee. But we have a remedy for that, folks. We spent a lot of time this morning. If you don't want it, pass a rule. We've tried to rein that in. We heard you last year loud and clear saying we're not going to do individuals as a Senate Appropriations Committee. You were right to say it last year, and we got it, and we're not doing it again. This directly deals with the budget and the revenues and the expenditures of the state of Wyoming. It started out as a joint appropriations committee, and we bring it to you for transparency purposes to the benefit of you as a body and the people of the state of Wyoming. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Hicks. Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This issue about transparency, I can kind of talk about it because I've been on both sides of this recently. I know a lot of folks down here understand a lot of these acronyms and where the money's been going for years, but the general public, they don't have a clue. I've had in the past my local legislators trying to explain this process, and the best explanation I received was a bunch of coffee cans. Well, that's pretty sad. I mean, I call it a Rubik's Cube at that point because they couldn't really explain it. So I think anything we can do to force this money into the minimal amount of accounts so the public can understand where the money is coming from without knowing about tipping funds and all the intricacies that's been developed over the years is a good thing. So I stand in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kolb. Senator Perkins.
Thank you. I'll see if I can just, I'll just see if I can wrap this up and just generally. As you heard, I mean, this was we tried to bring this before the Joint Appropriations Committee several times. It was talked about during the Joint Appropriations, and seven House members chose not to support that, and five Senate members did, and that's where we find ourselves here. We talked about that quite a bit extensively earlier today. But just two things I'd advise that just as a point of history, my recollection, one of the impetuses behind the Strategic Investment Projects account, SIPA account, was back in the day, the governor, the two governors ago, he would get quite upset because we never profiled capital gains that flew into the general budget. We never did that till later, and most of the people in the legislature also never knew about when those capital gains would come in. And so then there would be a bunch of Series 300 in the budget section, which you'll become familiar with next week, that would spend all this money and all these things happened to it. Most of us never quite realized what was happened until it was done. And so as the two governors ago would prepare his budget, he would always be very, very frustrated that he wouldn't know about this, that only the Appropriations Committee knew about. And so this account was created as a way to say, all right, we'll put this on the table and then the governor can include it in his or her budget as appropriate. And so that's kind of how it started. But since then, we've come a long way in transparency, and we've come a long way in trying to make sure as appropriations, I think the philosophy's changed, and that is not, let's keep all the power and all that knowledge in appropriations. Let's make sure, to the extent we can, let's start to simplify this and get it out there so that it's more understandable. It's still incredibly complicated, but we're slowly making steps there. And so this is another we've always heard about, as our good friend from the former senator from Sheridan used to say, you know, as we keep having more flips, trips, dips, and trips, and we've got all these accounts, this money flows everywhere, and this is an attempt to stop some of that. But just to give you an example how this is used. So this year, as we've come through the general estimated budget shortfall, you know, so we were looking at how we do this. At the end of the 2020 budget session, when we left here a year ago, when we just passed the budget, we knew that we were in trouble. But at that point in time, all of our projections, our Craig report said that we would probably have a surplus of $40.7 million left moving forward. So that was it when we left here in March a year ago. So come May 26th of 2020, just a few months later, the 2020 Craig report came out, and our shortfall had grown to not only to 877 million. Not only that, it had used up the 5% statutory reserve, which is about another 113. So just a few months later, we had $1 billion deficit that we were facing coming in. We moved fast forward to October 26th of 2020. And the governor had already implemented step 1 reductions and immediately went into action trying to reduce expenditures. We get to October 26th, and the governor announced his step 2 reductions, and Craig report came back with tourism being a little bit better, oil prices rebound a little bit, there was a little bit more money The shortfall was now down to 118 point, about 112 million with no statutory reserve, meaning it was really about 220 odd million. This is the general fund deficit. We're not even talking about the school foundation deficit. So then the governor came in and the governor made his recommendations. And with the January Craig and the governor's recommendations, he showed that we had a surplus coming into this session of 143,000, a little over 143 million, dollars. How did he get there? Well, he used what's called in doing his budget together. He used SIPA. He used the full statutory reserve. He did replace the statutory reserve, so there was some money went there. But he also used the 1% severance tax, and he also used SIPA. And so it looked like we had a reserve when maybe we did, maybe we didn't. But I use this as just an illustration to show that when you have these ISVAR accounts, you can manipulate this. And so is it really deficit? Or is it really a surplus? The legislature had certainly not appropriated. There was still significant amount of SIPA. SIPA was full at that point in time. Legislature never appropriated that, but when the governor did that, that's how he did that. So what we think, when you finish the Art Craig report with and the JAC Recs, we think the surplus we have right now, with using about 30 million of SIPA to pay for some major maintenance and some capital construction, just finish up the bare necessity of things to be finished. We think the surplus is really about 15.9 million. We've replaced the full statutory reserve, and we have refused to use or dedicate the 1 cent severance tax to that. So there are still lots more cans out there. You'll learn more about this, but you give that an explanation, or just to show that when you have the SIPA, it's kind of a squishy account. You can call it general fund, or you might call it savings, but it gets moved around, and we believe, and the Senate has moved that way in the last few years to try and get this back into the general fund. We appropriate general fund monies to fringe fund purposes, and we'll try and understand that and do that better. And we continue to be dedicated to that. And with that, that's just a little bit more explanation, a little bit background on SIPA and some of the reasons why we did what we did. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Perkins. Sensing we are right. All those in favor of Senator Perkins' motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 71, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Senate File 71 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration. Yes, President Dockstetter. Yes, thank you for that. I was thinking of doing that myself and then I forgot. So I will turn on your microphone
There we
and go right ahead.
Folks, it's nice to welcome one of our colleagues back in the midst of us. Senator Anselmi Dalton worked with us for a lot of years, and now she's back, and I'm going to give her my mic, Madam Chair, if that's permissible with you, to have her say a few words. Welcome our former colleague back on the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, President Dockstetter, for the introduction. I didn't come in honor. I didn't come on my shield. I came in gratitude. I'm grateful for all your support. You've all been great to me, and I appreciate it. And I want to come and say thank you to everybody for all the support you've given me. It's always been a pleasure working with all of you. Some of you I haven't worked with, and sorry that I haven't, but I did enjoy it, and the staff, great to see you. Hey, how are you? I love the reading up there. So it's great stuff. And so I wanted to come back and at least say hello. I had to sort of come down for a little emergency at the house. So Vice President Hicks was kind enough to call me this morning and ask me to run over. So I thought I would come and say hello, and I'd love to say hello to all of you. I've been sitting in the back and listening for a while, but again, I wanted to come in gratitude.
Great to see you, Senator. Thank you for those words. And so we are back to Senator Perkins.
I have privilege of the floor.
Yes, please, please
I'm not
do.
exactly how we do this, Madam Chairman, but Madam Chairman, the General Appropriations has an Joint Appropriations Committee has an executive session that starts at 4. And so even though you're on it, you're the chairman right now. So I would ask that if the Senate members of the Joint Appropriations Committee could be excused to attend that executive session.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and I will catch up with you as soon as I can.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we are back on, just Mr. Vice President, yes. Well, thank you all. Our good fellow Senator Ellis is going to take over for me so that I can go to this committee meeting, and I will get her acquainted and then she'll take over. Okay, thank you.
Committee of the Whole will stand at ease for 5 minutes to allow our staff to take a quick 5-minute break. Righty, senators, please start making your way back to your chairs. We've got some work to do. The committee of the whole will please come to order. The first Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 89. The reading clerk will please read the Senate file.
Senate File 89, Public Utility Safety Lights, an act relating to motor vehicles, sponsored by Senator Cost, was referred to Committee Number 8, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Anderson, Furphy, Landon, McEwen, Pappas. Senator Landon, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the Senate file. What is your pleasure, Senator Driscoll? Or Senator Landon, my apologies.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, to do so with the do pass recommendation on Senate File 89, Public Utility Safety Lights. There is a standing committee amendment, and I would ask that that be read in at this time.
Senate File 89, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 2, line 13, delete.
Madam Chairman, thank you for an explanation of the bill. I would call on the bill sponsor, Senator Cost.
Thank you, Senator Landon. Senator Cost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to say this is a short little bill, won't take too long, but the last time I heard that, I decided maybe I better just kind of hush up and hope that it gets through quickly. This is a simple bill. What we have here is public utility safety lights. And I was, let's see, what's the best way to say it? I was approached by the utility company up in our area. They said, would it be possible for us to be able to use a red light on our vehicles when we're going to an emergency and when we're at an extremely dangerous spot, because the yellow or the amber lights are just not paying, most people don't pay very much attention to them. I said, all right, let's give it a shot. I'm fine with that. So got a hold of the state highway department. They were able to write with me on it. And what it is it's just a simple amendment added in to the bill that they currently have. And to run you quickly through the bill, 2 pages, nice and short, and I'll add the amendment in where the amendment fits. It's on line 1, page 1, an act relating to motor vehicles providing for the use of safety lights by public vehicles, utility vehicles as specified, and providing for an effective date. And that's really all it is. The sections that are going to be involved, section 31-5-224B, the introduction, and 31-5-928, by creating a new subsection H, are amended to read. So as you go down, 31-5-224, operation of vehicles upon approach of authorized emergency vehicles and other parked or slow-moving vehicles. It talks about when an authorized municipal, public utility, or highway and construction or maintenance vehicle is stopped or is moving at less than 20 miles per hour on or within 3 feet of the roadway and is making use of any visual signals provided. The driver of every other vehicle as soon, and I skipped the statutes, as it's safe. 31-5-928, general lighting restrictions, authorized emergency vehicles. H is where this bill changes. In addition to those lights otherwise authorized by the law, a public utility vehicle may display one or more flashing red lights visible from 500 feet. Right here's where the amendment comes in. We removed in front. Originally, they had in front. In looking, they probably have some other statutes that they may want to consider changing that on later, but this is for this one. It has nothing to do with those others. So we're saying 500 feet of a vehicle when providing emergency service for purposes of this subsection, public utility means as defined in Wyoming statute 37-1-101A Romanet 6. That's all this is. The effective date is July 1st of 2021. The important thing to remember, first of all, it says may instead of shall. So it's not required. It's only an option for the utility vehicles. Second of all, in their emergency trying to get to somewhere, it's very difficult to move through traffic when we've got an amber light and people just pretty much ignore it. On the other hand, a red light, people get out of the way for. So that's all this is so they can get to these places. If they're on the side of the road, an electrical line is knocked down or something, they have the potential then to flash their lights for safety as they're trying to work on. With that, I would entertain any questions, but that's the bill.
Questions for the sponsor? We are on the amendment. Any further discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to Senate File 89, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. The amendment passes. We're back on the bill. Further discussion? Question being called. All those in favor that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 89, please say aye. All those opposed? The bill passes. Alrighty. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 4. The reading clerk, please read Senate File 4.
Senate File 4, Airport Districts, an act relating to aeronautics sponsored by the Transportation Committee. It was referred to Committee number 8, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Furphy, Landon, McEwen, and Pappas. Senator Landon, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the Senate file. What is your pleasure, Senator Landon?
Madam Chairman, thank you. I would move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with a due pass recommendation on Senate File 4, Airport Districts. There is a standing committee amendment. I would ask that it be read in at this time.
Senate File 4, Standing Committee Amendment number 1, page 1, line 3, delete.
Senator Landon?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Senators, this is going to be a familiar bill because we already walked you through this bill. It's an interim topic bill that comes to you from your Transportation Committee work over the last year. And you will recall that this is all about the opportunity for our communities out there to establish airport special districts. We talked about local control. We talked about it providing an option for communities to make that decision on their own. It allows for the communities to draw boundaries and to have special elections. So that's what the bill does. What we decided in the committee of the whole, Madam Chairman, you might recall that we sent this bill, we re-referred it back to transportation because there were some serious question marks that were brought up on the floor, some very good points made by several of the senators. We took those to heart. We went back to work on this bill, the Transportation Committee, and a working group that includes many of our constituent groups out there and did some work. The bulk of that work is represented in the Standing Committee amendment. I'm going to try to fly by this a little bit higher than usual since we've already looked at the bill pretty extensively. Here's what the amendment does, and then I'll be glad to stand for questions after a bit, drill down on specific areas of interest, or maybe point to a couple of things that I want to make sure that you fellow senators understand that we addressed. This cleans up language on page 2 regarding limitations on boundaries in the formation of districts where a county or municipality has exercised their powers to own and operate an airport. It is amended to allow for multiple airports to be included in an airport district. That will be of interest to the good senator from Park County because there are 2 airports up there. And so the amendment addresses that. It amends powers of the district to include air service development efforts as allowed to regional transportation authorities. It adds provisions for a sunset on any mill levy approved by the voters. This sunset provision requires an airport district to go back to the voters every 12 years to re-up that mill levy. Should the mill levy not be approved, it would not be eligible for another election for the next 23 months. It revises language regarding bond limits, but changing the limit from 4% of assessed valuation per bond to a total aggregate cap of 4% on all bond issues. And it adds a provision allowing an airport district governing body to enter into short-term loans for tax and revenue anticipation with their payoff required in the same fiscal year in which that money has been borrowed. So, senators, I will take you to a couple of spots in the Standing Committee amendment, and then I'll be glad to either discuss the airport district bill further, or we can debate any portion of the bill at that point. If you go to page 2, line 17, that is the portion of the amendment that I pointed to that is in reference to Park County. It inserts language which are not within the boundaries of a county or municipality exercising its powers authorized under 10.5.101. That is in relation to the fact that we have 2 airports in one area up in Park County. And I think that came up on the floor the first time we looked at this bill. If you go to page 5, line 13, that is just some language that we borrowed out of similar special district and joint powers legislation in our statutes, which simply says that the role of secretary and treasurer can be held concurrently by the same member of a board. A couple more, Madam Chairman, and then I'll rest and see if there are questions. I wanted to touch on something that was brought up by the good senator from Sweetwater County. And we had a rather extensive conversation about whether or not we should recommend in this Standing Committee amendment to you senators that we elect these boards, or do we appoint them? We did not include the language for an election of that special district board. We left it as an appointed board. And the reason for that is in part because in talking to the airport up in my neck of the woods, there's a very pointed effort to appoint the kind of people who can bring something to those boards. And the fact that we allowed for the sunset after 12 years In combination of that, we felt as a transportation committee, Madam Chairman, that we would bring it out this way. I call your attention to page 5, line 8, and that is the area of the bill that if you have an interest in making this an elected board for these special district airport districts, that is the place that you could do that. And we could come in with an amendment on second reading and do such a thing. We felt like the recommendation should be that we would stay with an appointed board. There are pros and cons both ways. I'll take you to page 8, line 17. That is the language. First, let me go to line 12 on page 8 and then line 17. The aggregate amount of bonds, that's the 4% that I alluded to earlier. The 4% indebtedness shall relate to the aggregate. Okay, and in determining that aggregate amount, we're not going to include, we will not compute bonds or other evidences of indebtedness payable solely from net revenues of an income producing facility or project. There might be an enterprise account in one of the buildings or at one of the airports, and that should not be included in this. And finally, Madam Chairman, and then I'll stand down because we've seen this bill for the second time today here. Borrowing money without election in anticipation of collection of taxes. Upon majority vote of the members of an airport district governing board, the board may borrow money without an election in anticipation of collection of taxes or other revenues, and may issue short-term notes to evidence the amount borrowed. Madam Chairman, that is a quick rundown of a rather extensive standing committee amendment that attempted to answer many of the questions and many of the concerns that were raised out here in the Senate. I hope we did the kind of work that I think we did. I think we made this a much better bill. And for now, I would stand for any questions, Madam Chairman. Be glad to debate or answer questions.
Thank you, Senator Landon. Did you move that amendment? I believe it was read in, but not moved.
Madam Chairman, thank you. I would move Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to Senate File 4. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Landon. Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And having just reviewed the amendment, concerns about the constitutionality of authorizing a district, a public entity to take a loan against, a revenue pledge for incoming projected revenues. And so beyond, there's a constitutional prohibition of a public entity becoming indebted. And so I'm concerned about that if the revenue projections aren't what the district hopes. What then with that line of credit? And then is the airport district in debt? Because we're talking about sums of money here that margin, I believe, would be close, very, very close. I'll find the constitutional provision.
Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My question to the bringer of the bill would be in regards to an appointment versus the election. Can he give us the pros and cons? And if appointed, who would do the appointments? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, have a question about the 12-year time limit for the expiration of these mill levies. I appreciate the attempt to have some continued accountability there, to have the voters in the district re-verify that this is in fact a good use of their taxpayer dollars. It seems like most similar provisions in our statutes are in a short time frame. At 4 years comes to mind. So just a little bit more discussion as to why 12 years in this particular instance.
Senator Landon.
Madam Chairman, thank you. To my good friend from Laramie County, quite honestly, that is an issue that did not come up in our committee, and I will promise to follow up with you if this passes through Committee of the Whole and dig a little bit deeper into the into 10.5.405 borrowing money without election in anticipation of collection of taxes? I think that's an excellent question and something that we would want to have resolved. So I'm sorry I don't have that answer today on the floor. Regarding the other senator from Laramie County, who appoints the board? That is a county commission appointment at recommendation of these special districts. So that airport district board would make the appointments. In speaking, with the good senator from Sweetwater County, we bounced around on both sides of this. There definitely is advantages to both, and there are drawbacks to both. The drawbacks to an election, for example, you have no idea who might run for that election. You might not get anybody to run for election to an airport district board. On the other hand, appointments sometimes tend to be pretty close to the management or to the director of the airport or whatever. But the advantage to that, Madam Chairman, is that you can pick a board that has certain talents that would be beneficial to an airport district board. So that's the issue that we can think about as the bill moves forward, if it does. Regarding the 12-year time limit, to my good friend from downriver, we did talk about that for quite some time. And given the fact that these airport district boards are all the time dealing with other sources of money, sometimes from the federal government, other times in the form of grants and special transportation monies that have certain timeframes on them. And it was the feeling of the working group that 12 years was enough to allow them the opportunity to go after some of those grant funds and federal funds. If you sunset too quickly, we thought that window would probably shut on some of the potential for extra money, outside money. So I hope that answers questions, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
We're on the amendment. Further discussion, Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to first thank the good work of the Transportation Committee. There's a lot of complexity to this and a lot of moving parts. But really the question for me right now is it appointed board or is elected board? And I look at the abilities of this board that we're now talking about possibly forming. On one hand, if they're appointed by their other entities within say in the county, could be the county and the city in particular cases, that would appoint people to this board. And those are political appointments. And qualified doesn't talk about the qualifications as being effective board members, just means they're of age and such. It doesn't mean qualified as being an airport board member. The issue that I see is they have the ability to levy up to a 3 mil, and they also have the ability to go out on a 4% bond without a vote. They can just go out on that bond, if I understand it correctly. And I think when you give that type of authority to an appointed board, that's one step that's insulated from the public. The public has the right to vote for people that tax them. And I think that's an inherent, constitutional truth. So when you start separating that and then having a board that has just been appointed, who are they responsible to? I'll tell you from my experience, it's basically the manager of said group, because that's generally what happens. And that's not necessarily always a bad thing, but in a tax situation, I think it's the wrong thing. I'm not really opposed to an airport district. I think, though, if it's done, it needs to be an elected body if they have taxing ability. And that's really the crux of it. And thank you for my chance to comment.
Further discussion, Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kind of a two-part question for the gentleman from somewhere south of Teapot. First of all, if this senator is from downriver, does that mean you're from up the creek somewhere? And how so? Secondly, secondly, does ownership of the airport necessarily need to go from the municipality or county or whoever actually owns that airport to the district? Or does that entity still owns the airport and the district is supporting it?
Senator Landon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. That's a great question. That is something too that I want to check before I answer. And I'll be happy to chase that down and lock it down. And again, back to the good senator from Sweetwater County, I appreciate him adding to the conversation regarding, do you elect them? Do you appoint them? And be happy to work with any one of you if you've got an idea for an amendment, and we'll make it the best that we can. I think regarding those additional monies, I like the fact that in order to assess that mill, it's going to that locality, that voter. We're going to the voters with this. And so I think the other thing, just to kind of help remember the reason for this bill. These airports are running in a deficit of somewhere in the neighborhood out across our state, $55 million a year that we are adding to that deferred maintenance deficit to try to take care of these airports. And you remember, I talked about the kind of economic and financial impact that these 40 airports out across, have for our state. It's in the millions and millions of dollars. And it's so important to things like our economic development, which we're going to really be, I think, paying attention to these next few years. So a lot of great reasons for this bill. Madam Chairman, I hope that covers our amendment, and I would call for the question on the amendment unless there are further questions.
Senator Scott.
Amendment.
Senator Scott, before you begin, is that your phone ringing?
No, it's not.
Just kidding, Senator Scott. Please proceed. There is a senator in the room with a very red face. Senators, please silence your phone. Senator Scott, please continue.
Madam Chairman, I think that my colleague from Sweetwater County was exactly right, that the crux of this is the taxing and borrowing authority, particularly the taxing authority. And I too am very nervous about taxing authority with an unelected board. At the same time, Madam Chairman, I think the committee was wise in its standing committee amendment to not try to put in an elected board. We're having a lot of trouble, increasing trouble, getting people to run for many of the down the ballot offices. Partly, small part because we've made campaign finance a difficult and bureaucratic process. People are scared they'll get in trouble by accident. I think in greater part because there has been so much negativity in both in social media and on the public press aimed against people in public office, and it's making it more difficult to recruit. I think by appointing a board, we're probably going to get a higher quality board that will do a better job. And I hate to say it, but the tendencies in our society are making it much more difficult to do these smaller things on an elected basis. But still, Madam Chairman, the 12-year provision in the Standing Committee amendment is an improvement on what was, which I think was no sunset on the taxing authority. My instinct is that that's way too long. I think, Madam Chairman, I'm going to vote for this Standing Committee amendment. But if that's the provision on third reading, I think I'm going to vote against the bill. I get very concerned that these unelected bodies have one election where they get a mill levy authorization because there's some particular problems that need to be dealt with. And then it just continues forever. And as our finances get tougher and tougher, we're going to see more of these districts wanting more mill levies, and our taxes are going to start creeping up. My suggestion is we look either at a much shorter sunset date, where you have to take it back as you would say a 1 cent sales tax every 4 years or something like that. Maybe 6 years, although that's getting to be fairly lengthy. Or you require the county commissioners to approve the mill levy on an every 2 year, something like that basis, where there can be a careful discussion about what do we need to do to get some of the improvements we really need done, and have certainty in that. I think that's another option we ought to consider, because I think many of the citizens think that the county commissioners are responsible for a lot of those mill levies, and tend to hold them accountable anyhow if they start to get out of hand. And that might be an appropriate thing, appropriate body to review the mill levy. One way or another, Madam Chairman, I think this bill needs amendment so that the people have a greater opportunity than what the standing committee amendment provides, in terms of being able to review the mill levy and to say enough is enough, we aren't getting our money's worth and our taxes are going up too much. So, Madam Chairman, I will support the standing committee amendment this time. I think the other things in it that are worthwhile. I think 12 years is better than nothing, but I certainly will have trouble voting for the bill on third reading if we don't improve the 12-year provision.
We are on the amendment. Senator Hicks.
Madam Chairman, actually, I think that I was going to take up the same line, and I'm trying to find where it was in the amendment, but with a little latitude, Madam Chairman, I think the remedy to the issue that we're talking about here, we can probably look to some of the other special districts, and that remedy already exists. Typically, in a lot of these county commissioner appointed districts, those districts have to go to the commissioners every year with their budget and get it approved by the commission because they are appointed by the commission. And so that might be a remedy that we want to look at. It resolves the issue of people out there. We've passed a mill levy and they can just spend it. And under appointed board, you need to have an elected official at the end of the day that's responsible for the expenditures of those monies. And maybe the way to do that is just make them have to bring their budget and get it approved by the commissioners that appointed them. But that, I think that already exists for some of the special districts. The one I'm most familiar with would be the solid waste disposal districts which have taxing authority, and the commissioners review and approve their budget. So it might be the remedy we're looking for.
Further discussion on the bill? Senator Landon, or excuse me, on the amendment. Senator Landon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to kind of wrap up, appreciate all the comments. Certainly to my fellow senator from Natrona County, those years, as I mentioned, we debated pretty extensively. What we didn't want to do is jeopardize the ability of these airports to get out there and to secure some of the other funding that they are able to reach out for, the grant funding, the federal funding, National Transportation Safety Board, all of those different sources of money. What you could end up doing if you're not careful, my caution is, if you put that sunset date too quickly, you may handcuff your airport boards to not be able to go after that additional funding, and they might end up actually losing ground instead of being able through a special district to secure funding badly needed for the airport structure. So we can work it as we go. If it gets past committee of the whole, be glad to work with the senators on that. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
Are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Lannon's motion to adopt Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to Senate File 4, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. The amendment is passed. We're back on the bill. Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a committee of the whole amendment, if it would be appropriate to address that now.
The reading clerk will read that in.
Senate File 4, Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1, corrected copy, page 7, after line 15, insert.
Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 for Senate File 4 and ask for your favorable consideration. What happened is, as we were working this bill, I was contacted by certain individuals, and they are having trouble accessing financial information. They mentioned 2 airports specifically. So I think to improve transparency, they need to put this financial information out there. I know some of the airports are having difficult financial times, but irregardless, the public should have access to that financial information. So this amendment says they will post their agenda and minutes and the financial information on their website so the public can access it. And secondly, their meetings are part of the public area where they should be able, the public should be able to attend their meetings. So that's what this amendment does. And so I would ask for your aye vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Questions on the amendment? Or discussion on the amendment? Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question on the amendment. I like the idea. My question is, do all special districts have websites? And if they don't, maybe we can amend this to maybe have them put it on the county commissioner's website if the special district doesn't. Thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment? Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for the body's knowledge, all public entities in the state of Wyoming are allowed to publish on the Department of A&I's website, which was created by the virtue of a good senator in the corner of the room over a decade ago. And so that is one location for some of those public records to be included. And a good question for the senator, because I've been trying to look it up, but my computer is a little slow. Ensuring that this amendment includes exceptions to the Public Records Act, because it's specifically identified by number, that 201 through 205 includes the exceptions, because I see that it says all records are subject. And does that mean there's some things that will not be subject to they're referenced in the exceptions to the Public Records Act? Because some of the materials of the airport district probably need to remain confidential because there are security planning issues or internal workings that are not subject to the Public Records Act. So just a quick question for my slow working computer.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a question of whether this would or wouldn't happen without this amendment. I think the intent of the amendment is something that I certainly support, but I guess I'm curious whether the amendment is needed because there are public records obligations for special districts. There are posting requirements for special districts. And it seems to me that all of this would and should happen due to other statutory provisions. The points made by the good senator, that's chair of the Judiciary Committee, would at that point certainly govern because the entirety of the Public Records Act would, I believe, be applicable, as well as the Public Meetings Act would then be applicable based on my understanding. So I guess I'd ask, is that accurate? and further ask if we didn't pass this amendment, what would the expectation be of the performance of an airport district?
Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Answer to a couple of questions. First of all, I initially had in here that they were to put this information on the county's website. And actually, the governor's office contacted me and asked that I change it to the airport district's website. So that's why I did that. And that's why it says corrected copy. Regarding to the question about the Public Records Act, quite honestly, I relied on LSO to look up those statutes, and so that's why it's in there. And regarding would this information be available? It apparently was not, and that's why they approached me and asked me to try to do something about it, because the information was being withheld. And so that's the purpose of the amendment. Thank you.
Further discussion, Senator Guru.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On and for the amendment, it's a good discussion. I think having these records available is, I know, important to a lot of folks, once again, about transparency. I think the good senator from the Bighorns has a good call about some smaller airports may not have a website of their own. I think an amendment that said either or might be in order. But I also think that there are a number of airports that do have their own websites. I know that do publish this information regularly, and I think we want to encourage that. And just one on the bill itself too. I can't help just agree with the good senator from Adjournment County about how important it is to really look at those timeframes, because airport projects can be very, very expensive. And that time frame may be necessary. So on and for the amendment, on and for the bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
We are on committee of the whole amendment number 1. Is there further discussion? Is there a question? Question being called. All those, in favor of Senator Furphy's motion to adopt committee of the whole amendment number 1 to Senate File 4, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. The amendment is passed. We're back on the bill. Senator Landon.
Chairman, thank you. And just to perhaps wrap up the conversation about Senate File 4 this evening, I wanted to get back to my friend from Laramie County, a very good concern regarding the borrowing of money. I have received an answer that if we go to statute 4110-125, borrowing money without election in anticipation of collection of taxes, a district upon the affirmation vote of 4 directors is hereby authorized to borrow money without an election in anticipation of the collection of taxes or other revenues, et cetera, et cetera. So that is language that is already in our statutes. And the answer to the good senator from the basin, the answer is yes. And I'll get a more formal answer for you by tomorrow, but I wanted to clear up and provide those answers to those questions, Madam Chairman. If there aren't any other questions, I just call for question on the bill.
Senator Hutchings.
Madam Chair, just a quick reread of that statute from the senator, the bringer of the bill. Thank you.
Senator Landon.
Was it in, I think the question was to repeat what, okay, thank you, Madam Chairman, sorry. 4110-125, borrowing money without election in anticipation of collection of taxes. Okay, thank you.
Further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Landon's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 4, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. The bill has passed.
All right, we're going to keep on going here. The next Senate file for your consideration is Senate File 17. And I just have to figure out where my notes went. All right, the reading clerk will please read the Senate file.
Senate File 17, Governmental Publication Requirements, an act relating to governmental publication requirements sponsored by the Corporations Committee, was referred to Committee Number 7, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Case, Driscoll, Nethercott, and Scott. No, Senator Boner. Senator Driscoll, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the Senate file. What is your pleasure? Chairman Driscoll.
Chairman, I move that when the Senate acts to rise and report it, do so with a favorable reading on Senate File 17, and for further explanation, I call on my normal Senator Nethercott. Thank you.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good senators, you have in front of you Senate File 17, Government Publication Requirements. This bill came to us primarily out of the need we heard from all of our public entities across the state going through budget cuts and trying to understand how they can more thoughtfully cut their budgets. And so obviously, as a result of the Public Records Act, as we just discussed, those are costs and expenses to those public entities. And so we heard a request from them to eliminate some of those requirements associated with publishing in the local newspapers, not to eliminate the requirement to publish or to make available. And so this bill serves to address some of those requirements associated with the publication of minutes of meetings and salary information in the local newspaper, and just those pieces. As you can imagine, needing to pay for publishing of minutes of meetings when they can be available on the public entity's website or other locations can be quite costly. We heard testimony from some of these entities that it comprises anywhere from 1% to 10% of their total budgets, and can have a particular impact on the smaller communities where those margins are significantly smaller. And so when we look at page 2, lines 3 through 5, which is really, we're just looking at the primary changes to the bill. Romanet A starts off with, or subparagraph A, the governing body of any city or town shall designate a legal newspaper and within 12 days after any regular or special meeting of the governing body of the city or town, post and maintain on its official website. So this is kind of a option for the city or town to also to publish in lieu of on their official website. And this is for the minutes of their regular and special meetings of the governing body. We address if the city or town does not have an official website, the proceedings or ordinance shall be posted in the town's clerk's office. And this is language that currently exists and nothing new is changing there. So moving down, we struck the requirement on lines 20 through 22 that the newspaper shall publish the copy of the proceedings within 9 days after receipt. And this has to do with the elimination of those costs. Page 3, a city or town are required to post minutes instead of publish. We're changing that word to post minutes to its official website. Under subsection A of this section, will separately post the following information. So the same requirements that were there before as to what information is to be made available to the public is to remain the same. So still the salaries of employees are still going to be posted online. The minutes are to be posted online, but just eliminating that newspaper requirement. But the city officials still have the choice to do that. So if their communities feel like that's important, it doesn't certainly prohibit them or preclude them from doing that. Moving down, we deal with, on page 4, we're dealing with the county's official newspaper and the posting there. So the same application for counties, same concepts. Same for the school districts. So cities, counties, and school districts on page 6 and 7. And they're required to make it on their website. And I'm not aware of any, I'm sure the good senator from the Red Desert has some towns that do not have websites, population 5. That said, I believe the majority of the municipalities have their own websites, and of course the counties do as well, and the school districts. And so this is not particularly burdensome on them, but if they don't have that official website, then they still need to publish in the newspaper. Let me just make sure. And with that, I would stand for questions. There is a committee of the whole amendment, and I'd ask that be read in.
Would you please read in the committee of the whole amendment, please?
Senate File 17, Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1, page 1, line 7, after.
And would you like to move that at this time?
Excuse me, I will move that amendment at this time. Excuse me. Senators, I move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to Senate File 17, and this is my amendment. So a little confusion about the Corporations Committee's bill and then my amendment here. So I want to make that distinction. This amendment expands where these legal notices can be posted beyond the local newspapers or county newspapers to include qualified online publications. And I would draw your attention on the amendment, and I think this is good for this discussion, on page 1 of the amendment, line 28 through 35, for the definition of what a qualified online publication might be. And it means an electronic publication to be used by the city or town for the publication of minutes and other information required by this section. And an electronic publication that has been published continuously in the city or town for not less than 12 months immediately preceding the completion of an agreement between a city or town and the provider of the qualified online publication. And this is some protective measures associated with the ability to create a website and call yourself a newspaper or an online resource or online publication, that they have to meet certain requirements. And most of us have those in our communities, if not the local newspaper itself having its online version. And one of the reasons for this is driving the conversation associated with the reduction and elimination of some of those costs. Because what does it cost to publish something online as opposed to printing it in the newspaper? Those costs are different, and that needs to be acknowledged. And it also recognizes how the public is accessing information in today's world. And, you know, some of the criticisms we've seen about allowing for these publications to be only located on the public entity's website instead of the newspaper is that you have to go to the public entity's website. And that is certainly true. But this helps alleviate that concern of also allowing for it to be posted on an online form instead of a print form, and it still satisfies those requirements of a one-stop shop of where people get their local community news, and also those public notices can occur there as well. So that is the amendment, and it's long in order to conform with the 3 different sections of the bill for counties, cities, and school districts. I'd stand for questions on the amendment and ask for your favorable consideration.
You have heard the description of the bill and the amendment. We're on the amendment. Questions on the amendment. President Dockstetter, you were first up.
Thank you. And I'll clarify, first of all, that I won't be able to vote on this bill ultimately. I'll declare conflict on the final vote. I won't be able to vote.
President Dockstetter, could you speak into your microphone a little more?
We'll
I
move it
have
over
on.
here.
All right, thank you.
Just 1, 2, 3. Okay. I won't be able to vote on this ultimately. because I'll declare a conflict. It's part of my business. But as I understand in our rules, I'll be able to address this. And I will on the amendment. I still want to save my speaking time for the bill itself. I have a lot to say about that. On the amendment, what I perceive then with this is you're just, you're kicking one out and moving another one in. What do you achieve with that? Every one of these publications have some type of online, at least most, I should say, have some type of online access or amendment. I asked our staff, I said, pull up what we have on our website just recently, month of January. 3,035,253,000. 3,035,253 website views 1 month. Site pages, 11,478,124. So what are we achieving here with this kind of, you can't be there, but you got to move it over together. And I'll have a lot to say on the bill itself, offering that comment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question revolves around this qualified online publication in the amendment here. Would that be construed to include like a school district newsletter? Would that suffice? I mean, are we getting that kind of that far away from and less formal than going straight to the newspaper? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Further questions on the amendment? Senator Nethercott, did you want to address any of those?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, I think the importance of this amendment really goes to the conversations and the bill around how people are accessing news and media and public notices and ensuring that there is transparency. And the good president clearly supported that concept by the numbers that the newspapers in some of our communities are able to demonstrate through access of readership, essentially proving the point of expanding our understanding of where some of these public notices should be posted and or published. The question concerning the definition of a qualified online publication, that's a great question. That's certainly not the intent to default it to a local school district's newsletter. And so if additional protective language, is certainly welcome, the concept with that amendment and that definition is to ensure that it is truly a legitimate online news source for that community. And so the language, when we look, for example, on page 1, lines 29 through 30, it means an electronic publication to be used by the city or town for publication of minutes and other information required by this section. And so we look back at the entire statutory section associated with public notices. It's intended to be for a resource, a newspaper of general circulation in the county. So consistent with those statutory requirements of being actually a legitimate and authentic community news source. And it can't just have popped up last week. It needs to have been published continuously in that community online for not less than 12 months, immediately preceding a completion of the agreement between the city and town. So, whether or not someone would try to identify a school district newsletter as being a qualified online publication, that's certainly not the goal. And that would be, I think, an evasion of what this amendment is trying to do. So if there's concerns about that, welcome any efforts to tighten that up, but that's certainly not the intent. And that would be an evasion, I think, of the public records. But again, I want to say that, or the public notices, what we're asking is that all of those notices be available on their websites anyway. So whether that be through the online newsletter that's always available or not, I think is a question for this body to continue to discuss.
We are voting on the amendment of Senator Nethercott's motion to adopt the Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to Senate File 17. If you would like to vote for this, please say aye. All those opposed, no. The amendment has failed. We are back on the bill. What's that? Did you hear me ask for the vote?
That's for the vote, but I think people were confused. I'm not positive
Okay.
about that.
All right.
Yeah.
Are you ready to vote on the amendment? Question has been called on the amendment. All those in favor of Senator Nethercott's motion to adopt the Standing Committee Amendment, Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to Senate File 17, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The amendment has failed. We are division being called. Those in favor, please stand. And we have Senator Anderson. Okay, 10. Those opposed, please stand. As I said, the motion has failed. But I do want to tell you, I really appreciate you being loud because with all of this plexiglass up here, it is incredibly hard to hear. And so thank you for that. We are back on the bill. Senator Kloss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You know, a couple of things are drawn to my mind. First of all, we just a couple of bills ago talked a huge amount about being able to be transparent in our work. And now all of a sudden we're saying, well, we can be transparent, but we're going to put it into other ways. And that concerns me. I've checked with both of the counties that I happen to represent, and they have an agreement to share. One county has 3 newspapers in it. They split the cost between the 3 of them. The other county has 2 newspapers in it. They split the cost between the 2 of them. So it's reducing the amount that's had to be paid instead of having to pay that for both groups. The other part of it is, even with some of the things that we've dealt with in agriculture and other things, we've said we need to send a letter. We've said that we need to send a certified letter in cases, even when we said we were going to put something online. You know, we are in a technology world. I agree. We've got it all. And I probably like it as much as anybody or maybe more. But we have a number of people out there who don't. And I think we have to respect that and provide it for them. I know it might be of an expense. Maybe we need to look at the cost of it because there is a statute that has that cost and consider lowering it a little bit. But at the same time, I think we owe it to those people to still get that out to them so that they have the right to read and hear that, because the notes I'm getting are from quite a few elderly people that do read the paper and they don't worry about the computer. So I'm just real concerned, and I'm concerned about our transparency. I think we need to think of all of our constituents and consider maybe saying, no, it should still be in the papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cos. Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to tag on to the good senator from up in the northern area. I think I understand completely the cities and counties trying to cut a little bit here and there. But when we heard testimony on this last year, actually, some of the towns said it was less than 0.5%. So we're not talking about an awful lot of money. And to me, transparency, you can't put a price on transparency. And so I think I kind of look at it like it's the millennials and the Gen X and the younger generations and some of us. We can do the electronic. We can have our choice. I actually have subscriptions to newspapers, and I also read things electronically. So not a problem. But as the good senator mentioned, we have a lot of seniors that don't have access to electronically, and they don't know how to monitor, they don't even know how to get on the internet if they have it sometimes. And those are the folks that I'm worried about. I'm worried about everybody actually, but I think transparency is a biggie. I think access is a big deal. And like I said, I mentioned this before when I spoke on this, is that in our city, we have a website, the city I live in, and hardly anybody goes to it. We keep track of, we used to keep track of how many people visited, hardly anybody did. Now, if that was the only place they could get their news, maybe they would visit it more. But we have the readership in our newspapers where people find out what's going on. If there were issues with liquor licenses, zoning, what was going on with the school district, cities, towns, whatever, counties, that's where the people were finding out the news. And that's when they would flood the gates and get to your meetings, and not because they happened to go to the website to find out the information. So I think this is a bill that I can certainly oppose. Thank you very much.
Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my thoughts are similar. I think of my town of Du Bois, of about 1,000 folks, the vast majority are seniors. The next newspaper to Du Bois is about 80 miles away. And it is, I think, about transparency. I go online for my news before I go to the newspaper, but that is not the demographics of the vast majority of my rural Senate district. I cannot support this, but I understand where this is going. We're probably eventually going to get to this point, but at this day, at this hour, with my constituency being that type of demographic population, I'm going to have to be a no. Thank you.
Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know, most people know that I am not a big fan of newspapers. They haven't treated me well in the past, but one of my constituents called me and spoke to me about this bill. And surprisingly, he convinced me to be a no vote. And I'm going to be no because I'm going to piggyback on what the previous senators have said. He brought to my attention the small town newspapers, and I have compassion on them. They haven't written about me badly in the press, but so I will be voting no on this bill, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to urge a little caution before we've already set in our heels about whether or not we're going to vote on this. Certainly I think transparency is important. I have elderly people in my family who've never touched a computer. So I understand that concern about accessing information and the value of still having paper. I think that this bill might, and maybe the bringers of it can add some clarity to the discussion that was had during the interim about offering both options. Because I can tell you that looking at the second part of this bill, which deals with requirements for school districts to publish information, you may notice, and you maybe have never seen it in your paper, but one of the duties of your school board is to publish information about how much the superintendents make, how much certain teachers make, and there's a very uniform prescription of what has to be published. And every year you'll see on page 6, going on to page 7, line 3, it says individual yearly gross salary payments shall be published only once in March of each year. And as someone who is worried about and just kind of wants to pay attention to those salary levels, I can tell you it's not easy and transparent to find on school district websites. So I kind of want to have my cake and eat it too. I want to be able to access this information online, and I also want to reserve the right for people that rely on paper copies to have that information. So I would be interested in knowing, for the people who have worked and invested a lot of time in this bill, if it's worth the effort to bring a second reading amendment that would provide both, because that certainly would be my preference. And so for those who have already declared their opposition, I'd ask you to think about that as maybe a possibility for alleviating your concerns and earning your support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Ellis. Senator Rothfuss, were you standing up a while ago?
I was. Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I appreciate the work of the corporations committee. They were asked to go do this and they did it. It's a good bill draft. And the key here is try to find savings for communities and cities, towns and counties. There's no question that's what this bill does. That was the directive. And that's a request by the cities, towns and counties, which is reasonable since they're struggling with their revenue and their budgets as well. But this really is just a policy choice of how informed and how we want to inform and what actions we want to take and what we want to ensure is being communicated to our constituents. And I share the view of many of my fellow senators that this is not time yet to get rid of the newspapers. And I'm afraid that is what would happen, even though they continue to have the option. There's no question that some communities would continue to publish in the newspaper as well as the website. I believe that this would lead to savings through failing to communicate appropriately in the way that the public has been used to with the community. And so I do consider that a concern, and it's a concern I have. And again, it really is just a policy choice. And I think everyone in here can make that choice as to whether they're comfortable with it for their community or not. I'm just not comfortable with it yet. The concept that was expressed by my good friend and colleague from here in Laramie County is a good one. The idea of potentially having both of the options on the table, that's something that I would support where it's an and clause, but then I worry about the smaller communities potentially struggling with the website requirements at this point in time, and it ends up costing them more. So at this point, I'm going to just end up being one of the no votes, I think, and with no malice, but I feel that it's not quite time yet to save money this way, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Senator, is there, well, let's go to Senator Cooper first, and then we'll get to the rest of you. Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to reiterate what several folks have said here. Across my 5 counties, 7 school districts, and 13 municipalities, the only reliable source we have is, and the only consistent source we have is our newspapers. With the exception of if we take a copy down and put it at the coffee shop, that's probably the best distribution. But our newspapers are essential, and that's where the communication gets disseminated, and it's essential for our communities for that to remain as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cooper. Senator Kinski.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm tempted to vote for the bill, having been much aggrieved by my local media. Particularly when they quote me accurately. I'm reminded of the old joke where the politician goes to the newspaper and he pleads, he says, "Please, can't you give me the benefit of the doubt?" And the next day the headline said, "We doubt he's of any benefit." Having said that, it's an important role that they play in our communities. And transparency is the word that's been used, public disclosure, public access. I used to, I'd have people say, "Well, I don't necessarily read the legals." And I said, "You don't need to, you just need to be able to when you want to." It's just that, maybe that fellow you see at the barber shop or that gal at the beauty shop did. And there's something that's prompted that needs to be looked into. And it does come at a small cost. I have data here that the average of all newspaper spending for all counties average is 0.12%. And for all municipalities, for all public notices as a percentage of their overall budgets, it's 0.17%. And what you get from that is exposure statewide to paid circulation of 98,000 people, most of them older, as my colleague said. And these newspapers then get passed on. In my household, I read it, my wife reads it. The weeklies especially get passed around a lot. And so the total print readership is estimated at about 250,000. So that's important. I feel it's important enough actually that when I was mayor, I spent more money than the legally required minimum. I felt it important for people to know what was going on. We published project updates and including on the radio, where we are in major construction projects, where we are in high profile projects. There's a requirement for publication of salaries, and it's just real minimal. You just give a job title and you just give like wage or something. We would push columns in there that said total wage, overtime, pension, health insurance, accrued time off, so that the public could see, you know, when their friend down the street talks about how underpaid they are, they can look in there and see how many employees actually are making over $100,000 for a little city in northeastern Wyoming. So I felt that kind of disclosure was important. It wasn't done for any petty reason with respect to the employees. We didn't disclose their names, but I felt it important for the public to know, you know, that the pension costs, the health insurance costs, in a town where a lot of people don't have pensions and health insurance. So I went above and beyond, and I did it with an all of the above strategy, of which newspapers are an important part. And yes, they're vexing to folks like me sometimes, but nonetheless, we have to concede that they're important. They've not gone away, and I think it's important that we maintain the current publication requirements. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a reminder, this is a Corporations Committee bill, and evidently I'm from the old school where the committee supports the bill. Here's to the old school generation. I want to just redirect the conversation. It's not that the Corporations Committee doesn't respect, appreciate, value, and have personal relationships that are positive with our local newspapers. Indeed, we all do. That was my first real job. I have a degree in communication and journalism. I value the fourth arm of government, and I feel that they should take an obligation too and recognize that their readers, their consumers who pay for their product, want that material. And so by forcing a mandate to our cities and counties to pay for that material to be sold to their consumers for a value and a price as government property, that further consideration is warranted. And just because we've done it this way for so long doesn't mean it's the way it needs to continue when we have new availabilities of accessing the public for transparency. I recall asking the newspapers if they felt like we should add radio to this conversation as well. I mean, what about the folks that can't read? Those elderly people who struggle to read, who can't afford the newspaper. Radio's free. You can just tune right in and we'll read the minutes to you. You know what they said? No. And do you know why they said that? Because Bighorn County pays $20,000 a year. Campbell County pays $30,000 a year. Carbon pays $40,000. Crook pays $27,000. Goshen pays $11,500. Park $22,000. Laramie County pays $42,000. That's a salary, or that's somebody's insurance premium for healthcare. Lincoln is $24,000. Niobrara is $24,000. Niobrara is $24,000. They're better off to do direct mail. Platte County is $24,000. Sheridan is $28,000. Evidently, there's a new mayor. Sweetwater is $58,000. Uinta is $15,000. Teton, $101,000. This is just the county. This is not the school district, and this is not the municipality. And Weston is $15,000. Again, I think direct mail would be more cost effective. So the purpose for the Corporations Committee to evaluate this is there a way that government can operate smarter? Because you know what we've learned in the last few years? That other private entities have obtained this information, otherwise known as data, which we know is more valuable than gold in today's world. have obtained it through public records request and regurgitated that information on private websites. Why? For profit. And you know what? It's working. So the fact that our newspapers didn't catch on to that data is value in the modern age online, I can't fix that. But I'm also not here to keep those businesses, which is what our newspapers are, going. And a little competition for them might be helpful, whether that be through an online newspaper source, radio, or other methods to get transparency out. I support transparency. I support the fourth arm of government. And I think they can participate more thoughtfully rather than just digging our heels in. There's a lot of people they don't have, those newspaper numbers are declining, right? Fact. So I just want you to reconsider the reality of this situation. I think the good senator from Fremont County is right. If this bill doesn't pass now, it will likely start having those conversations in the future. So something for real consideration here. Certainly love, value, and support all local newspapers. They're a huge service in this community and then in this state. That's not what this bill is about.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, my colleague from Laramie County raises some excellent points, and I think it's just the difficulty that we're having in making a leap versus taking a much smaller step. And I think if we offer both to our constituents, we'll start seeing how that plays out, to that point about competition. Because I think on the national level, and then, I mean, even to the state just south of us, I saw a major newspaper that was a very important institution for that state completely disappear. And I think that's a real concern for a lot of news agencies. And so what happens then when those news agencies start dying out? I think that's a concern for us in Wyoming. Then where does the public get their information? If we consider this and start moving toward having more of an online presence or more online access, I think that'll make that transition a little bit easier if and when that day comes where we're not relying on paper newsprint copies to be delivered, simply because of cost, subscription cost, readership going down, those things that are difficult and challenges that our media faces, but problems that we certainly can't fix as a legislature. So I would urge this body to keep this bill alive. Let's continue the discussion, see if we can maybe make it an easier pill to swallow, because the future's there. At some point, I think it'll be primarily online. And certainly my kids they'll laugh at the notion that we used to get papers delivered to our homes. So let's start making that transition now, figure out a way to do that, and then maybe have that conversation about newspapers down the road in several years when we need to.
Senator Case was up first, so good try, everyone. Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. Madam Chairwoman, things are different now. You can't believe how different this legislature is from the time I first came in. You know, every year they've said, are you gonna go paperless? Are you gonna go paperless? Are you gonna go paperless? I'm not quite there yet, but I'm pretty paperless, really. And when we were first in here, and Senator Scott, he's not paperless. I will point that out, and I mean it in a very kind way. We all had those big racks here, you know? And we used to go you could stand in the gallery upstairs and look down. And when the amendments came out, we had different colored amendments on paper for different, readings. And you could watch it was like pixels on changing as first the white color and then the yellow color and then the orange color came across and swept across everybody's desk. It's not there anymore. So I have, in my county, there are lots of competition between the newspaper and online sources for presentation of news. I have my preference. I surely do. But the online is a very significant bit of news in my county. And they have written to me and said, why is it that we can't be the official publication? And I don't really have a good answer for that, because I think their readership is probably bigger, and the archivalness, you can have archival websites. There are definitely places that do that capture websites and archive them forever, I guess, Madam Chairwoman. There's also this funny thing is one of the arguments that our friends in the newspapers offered was that they're going online. And that you could be able to have these legal notices online on their websites, and they're very proud of them. They're proud of their online services. That's the way they're adapting. Yep. I think that makes our point. There's one other thing. You guys, we're going to have to cut. You can't have it both ways. You cannot say we don't want new taxes, and yet we don't want to cut every time we have a cut on the table. You may have signed a pledge, but you cannot have it both ways. You have to go one or the other, because Wyoming's balanced budget requirements require it. It's a good time to make up your mind. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Senator Case. Senator Hicks was up first, so I guess.
Madam Chairman, I'm going to make this quick, kind of sums up where I'm at on this thing is, I would remiss to tell you that one time there was a guy named Mark Twain that said, if you don't read the newspapers, you're uninformed. But if you do need to read the newspapers, you're misinformed. You know, and I take that to heart, Madam Chairman. But you know what has become the scariest words in the English language nowadays is I read it on the internet. And that scares me a lot more than being misinformed, Madam Chairman. But I just would share, I think we're all going there, and I think the good senator from Fremont County, we're transitioning, folks. Maybe we just need to revisit this in another year or two, give it a little more transition time. So at this point in time, I'm going to be a no vote on this bill. I agree with everything my colleague from Fremont County said, but I also think we have a responsibility for those older people, and God forbid they read it online. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
I'm going to Senator Biteman first because he's been up 3 times. So Senator Biteman.
All right, I need the exercise, Madam Chair. On and against this, I think to put things in perspective, transparency is more important than saving 0.12% of somebody's budget. And to put some of these numbers into perspective, these counties need to prioritize better. I mean, they're paying their dues, their share to the lobbyists, the public funded lobbyists that they pay for, which oftentimes the data I'm looking at is more than what they pay for this. So let's talk about priorities here. They're just looking to us to help them out, bail them out. And, you know, we can have the tax pledge bingo card going, how many times people are going to bring that up. But this is crazy. It blows my mind that they hire a lobbyist to lobby on behalf of government for more government. And then they're gonna keep doing that, but then they want to take away the transparency that our voters and our constituents depend on, which is public notices in the paper. So I hate to interrupt the resuscitation efforts on this bill, but it is what it is. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Anderson, I see your hand up. Everybody's been, so we wish you were here with us, and go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I wish I was there too. Next week I will be. Madam Chairman, thank you for the opportunity. I'm not an attorney, nor am I a journalism graduate like one person said just recently, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn once. So Madam Chairman, I have been a defender of the printed newspapers for quite some time on this issue, as long as I've been in this legislature. But I see the handwriting on the wall. My local newspaper is going digital. They're putting everything on the internet also, and they are prepared to put all the legal notices on there also, and will compete with everyone else. So I am for this bill now. One of the things I like is that on the digital, I can expand it so I can read it. On the newspaper, I try to tear it apart. It won't get any bigger. And it's kind of a problem in reading it. And I think a lot of my older friends have that same problem. So the digital seems to work better for the older people also, that you keep referring to. Thank you.
All right, Senator Cost.
Thank you, Madam. Excuse me. Three things. Number one, some people brought up some good points in here. I think maybe that we do need to maybe try to keep the bill alive for at least a little bit more and talk about, are there options? Maybe there are ways we can work on things a little bit. I'll be reasonable to that. I might be a no vote in the end, but for now I'm saying, okay, I can work to that direction and think about that a little bit. One other thing that I had to say is, when do some of us that keep saying the old people are watching this going to start saying us? Because I'm seeing a lot of white hair around here. I don't have as much as they do. Anyway, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Senator Cole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to talk about the unfunded mandate we're talking about here. I mean, on one hand, I understand, things are changing. On the other hand, we got a lot of folks that like the newspaper. But I'll give you the example in Sweetwater. We've got one paper that's 2 days a week. The other paper is 1 day a week. I mean, maybe there's a possibility we come to a compromise and talk about how many days a week this paper publishes, because frankly, a lot of folks don't even read it, even the people that like newspapers, because the news is so old. Things are changing. But how can we force our counties to spend all this money and not even give them the option? If they wanted to publish in a paper, that's great. Some counties have the money, some counties don't. But it's a little, I don't know, I'd say kind of snobbish sometimes that we all think that, I don't know, they're just going to take care of it. Like they're going to make magic money. We don't have money. We have budget problems. They have budget problems. And I think maybe there's room for a compromise. This is a tough transition. I love newspapers. I use them twice. We read them, and I use them for our birds. So they're a good item. They're a great item to have. But it's a new day. It's a new day, and we have new budget problems. So thank you.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a request to my colleagues, we had a robust discussion this morning about how we meet in the interim, how much time we spend on bills, and what kind of deference and weight and gravity we should give to that. I just want to remind the body, this is a committee bill, and we spend a lot of time as legislators driving across the state, obviously pre-pandemic, but a lot of time working and listening and considering these bills. And so I always think it's a travesty when we defeat these kind of bills on a committee of the whole, especially when we've heard concerns. We've heard members in this chamber who are willing to offer some amendments that might sway your direction. I would just ask that we give this committee bill some deference in making sure that we sleep on it, we make good decisions. We've got other opportunities to reject it down the road. But that's how this process, and again, maybe I'm just part of that old school of the Senate. That's how this should be. And I think that's an important distinction for this bill and the importance of this issue. So I'd urge you to give it another look when more amendments come before you for your consideration. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Driscoll.
Madam Chairman, thank you very much. I was going to sit on my hands, but I feel compelled to make at least a base level of comments. We're talking about saving money and doing whatnot. The 3 counties I represent, I haven't had any of the governments get a hold of me and say, we want this bill to happen. They've all said it doesn't represent a huge part. I'm just not hearing the scream. But what I have heard, I'm going to tell you, for me, as far as the comments, other than gun bills and a couple of weirdo deals, I've got more comments from more constituents that I never hear from, that they never get a hold of me, but they have. They've called me on this. They've sent me emails and said, I don't want you to quit putting it in the papers. And I feel compelled to stand up and say, I'm here to help support them, and it's important. I think at this point, it's kind of a choice of the cities and towns to come to us and demand that we don't do it if their budgets are that tight. But we really do have, particularly in that older population, when you get out in rural areas like where I'm at, the papers is God for them. It's what they live by. And I've got to say, that's where I'm at on this one at this point in time. Thank you.
Senator Landon, you have been so patient. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I know everyone wants to continue, and I'll get out of the way in a second. really commend everyone. I wanted to back up though and just tell you how honored I was to serve as the chairman of your corporations committee the past 2 years. And I think this piece of work right here is reflective of the kind of committee that we had. And, you know, it takes a little bit of courage to walk out there on the edge of the ice. And this one is one of those. I'm really proud of this debate. And one of the reasons at the very end of our debate during the interim, as the chairman of the committee, I said, I'm going to vote to pass this out, but I have reservations. And part of those reservations, I think most of you know that I was a newspaper journalist. That was my career before I became public relations and public administration and all the things that came after. I still have a couple of plaques from the Wyoming Press Association. Pretty proud of them. And, you know, it's hard for me to talk about leaving anybody behind in that industry. But people more eloquent than me have pointed to that fact. I'm going to keep this thing alive. I like what the senator from Laramie County said just a few minutes ago. Let's keep this thing alive. Let's work it. Let's see if we can't find a compromise that might make this bill better. And it might be, we might be able to land it in the perfect spot. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Landon. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I encourage the body to do the same thing. I think it's appropriate for us to keep this alive as a committee bill and to provide some deference to the committee for the good work they've done. It unquestionably was good work. It's a good bill. It's just whether or not you agree with it from a policy standpoint. We may not. But there may be ways to get this chamber to support it. And I'd certainly like to give the committee the opportunity to look into that. There was excellent debate. There were good reasons to be supporting this legislation, particularly the idea of competition not existing and some of the challenges that provides. I think that's a strong point for us to look to. So I hope the body will support it on committee of the whole, even if you choose not to support it once we get to third reading, because it's not in the shape you want. I still maintain my concerns, but I'm more than willing to look at compromise. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Senator McEwen.
As the only senator in this room who signed a pledge, I would also like to see this proceed down the path a little further. It's some interesting debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Our President Dockstader.
Thank you. Good discussion today. How about that? Where do we start? Where do I start? And I will once again say to you, I'm going to vote conflict on the final vote, as I did not vote on the amendment. Let that go as is. But in my business, almost 40 years as a Main Street business, pays a payroll tax and employs Wyoming people with that business. I have to sign a statement of ownership. So I'm publishing this, I'm doing this. I do that because the government says that's what you got to do. I've done that nearly 4 decades now. Note on rural readership, how about 70%? Those of you who stand up in the cities, yeah, it's a different story. Go out in your rural communities, we drop off courtesy stacks of newspapers at 5 o'clock in the morning at the coffee shops, up and down this 50-mile long valley because cup of coffee in the newspaper. There you go. That's what we do. We're a big part of the community, and I can take into all these rural communities across the state. Same thing, big part of the community. I spent our little 3-week hiatus, so we stepped back. It wasn't about publishing the minutes or the hardcore news stories about their town councils. We do those automatically. I was covering a community on the north end of my valley that was celebrating winter in many different forms and fashions. Motorcycle races with the tracks on the motorcycles, big 2-page spread, front page picture. A couple of weeks later, sled dog races, same thing. Community newspaper right in the middle of it. You think we make money on that? No, not even close. But we're a part of the community. We're part of the whole valley. They mentioned that in the committee hearings. I heard that. Our folks from one of the associations said, well, the newspapers contribute. Contribute? My goodness, that wasn't even a close compliment to what we do to our valley. Now about the percentages. You're spending this much, you're spending that much. There's a deeper story to that. There's always a deeper story. How about these messages, these figures that were thrown out, if you could save this much? Well, I'll go down the list too. Campbell County, what's their overall budget for publication? 0.02%. 0.02%. I go all the way down the list. Goshen, 0.06%. My own county, 0.13%. Sheridan, 0.18%. Uena, 0.09% in budgets that are very big. Very small part goes to the publications. About the dues to these associations, you want to save money on employees? Converse, 19, they spent 19 on public notices. They spent another 19,000 just for dues to be part of this county association that uses tax dollars to come down here and lobby us. Good point from my senator from Sheridan. Park County dues, 19,000. Sweetwater, $27,000 in dues. Uena, 15,900. You want to talk about where the money's going? Want to talk about digital? We're already there. They can figure it out. They don't need your direction. I respect committee work, but we've dropped committee bills before. Right there. There's my public notices in my newspaper and on my cell phone. How about that? And the numbers, what do we have just in a month? Website views, 29,845. Site page views, 132,000, 199. Yeah, we're there. We don't need to be force fed. And I can take you to publications all the way across this state that already got it figured out too. We're doing it all. And we even talk about it on the radio too, but that's a unique situation that I have. Folks, this one needs to be put away. Let the businesses across Wyoming figure this out on their own. Let's put this one away now. And I will remain in conflict on the final vote, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sensing we might be ready to vote now, are we? All right. All right, question being called on the bill. All those in favor of Senator Driscoll's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with a favorable recommendation on Senate File 17, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
No.
The noes have it. The bill has failed. Division being called. All those in favor, please stand. All those opposed, please rise. Did we get Senator Anderson? The bill has passed. The Senate File 17 has passed. Yes, 15, no, 12. So the next bill for our.
Madam Chair, what was
Mr.
that vote?
Majority,
What was that vote again?
could you show me the vote again, please? 4, 15, noes, 12.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, just a privilege of floor for a moment.
Yes,
I think it's
Mr.
important,
President.
once we stand, make our vote, that debate stops and further persuasion needs to cease at that point and the vote needs to be made. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that instruction. Mr. Majority Floor Leader. All right.
We can't hear him.
You can't hear. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't have your microphone on. Could you please say that again?
Madam Chairman, I move the committee of whole rise and report.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion has passed. Thank you for the great debate today, guys.
I'm gonna see, like, yeah, we gotta go to back for executives. The House is now ready to meet.
You know, the honorable chairman of the House Appropriations.
Reading clerk will read the committee of the whole report.
Mr. President, your committee of the whole, having had under considerations bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. Senate File 72, do pass. Senate File 70, do pass amended. Senate File 71, do pass amended. Senate File 89, do pass amended. Senate File 4, do pass amended. Senate File 17, do pass. Senators Steinmetz and Ellis, Chairman.
You have heard the report. You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carried. Report has been adopted. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, that clears the desk.
Mr. President, I move that we stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Thursday, March 4th.
Announcements, Senator Case, Chairman Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you. I neglected I didn't have the bills handy today, so if you indulge me, your committee number 3 revenue will meet 15 minutes after noon recess tomorrow in Capital Extension Room W6 and online. We'll take up Senate File 69, ad valorem tax administration, Senate File 97, state employee longevity pay prospective repeal, Senate File 134, lodging tax exemption for residents, Senate File 150, death penalty repeal. If introduced and assigned, and I don't think you did it, we introduced that. We did? Okay, we'll take that up. Gotta die sometime. Senate File 92, public hospitals out of county operations. That's if time permits. We're going to continue this noon meeting upon adjournment, so tomorrow could be a heavy day. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Senator Wassenberger.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee, committee number 5, Senate Agriculture, Public Lands and Water Resources will meet tomorrow, Thursday, March 4th, upon adjournment in room W004 to hear the following bills. Senate File 135, water rights, livestock on federal lands. Senate File 157, property rights limitation on local authority. Thank you.
Senator Landon, you were up next. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Senate Transportation Committee is going somewhere down to W2 tonight. In about 10 minutes, we'll take up Senate File 12, insurance discount for accident prevention training. Senate File 106, transportation statutory amendments 1, and Senate File 107, transportation statutory amendments 2. And Mr. President, this special announcement tomorrow for the Senate Transportation Committee, we will meet tomorrow in W4 down below at 12:15 lunchtime for confirmation interviews with Susan Holmes and Mark Hughes for the Transportation Commission. Again, that's at 12:15 tomorrow that we will interview those two. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator, let's go across the back room, Chairman Perkins, and then up to Chairman Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your appropriations meeting will meet, your appropriations committee will meet again on March 4th, tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. in room E301. Take up consideration of on a re-referral, Senate File 58, Wyoming investment in nursing funding. And then we'll undertake as the initial hearing committee, Senate File 121, state funds, investments and distribution, Senate File 139, community-based in-home service program, Senate File 124, defending Wyoming business, trade and commerce amendments. And if there's time, we'll try and get to Senate File 136, required public service commission considerations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tomorrow, committee number 6, travel, recreation, wildlife, and cultural resources will meet again to take up Senate File 103, dealing with resident and non-resident hunting licenses, license issuance and fees, starting at 8 a.m. in the Capitol Extension, room W2, and it will also be held online. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further announcements? Majority Floor Leader, you have an announcement? You don't? Okay. Chairman Ellis.
Mr. President, just briefly wanted to apologize to the body. I was, after the question had been called on that prior bill, I was continuing to debate the bill, and I apologize to the body for that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right. Unless you have something, I'm going to call. Okay, go ahead. Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, your committee number 7, corporations, will meet tomorrow, March 4th at 8 a.m. State Capitol Room W110 and online. Consider Senate File 102, unclaimed cooperative utility deposits unfinished from the previous meeting. Senate File 36, for-profit public benefit corporations, and Senate File 62, extending the sunset date for the Office of Consumer Advocate.
Thank you. Further announcements? Further announcements? All right, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The Senate shall stand adjourned until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, Thursday, March 4th.